is changing that piece. And then we also have in our current purchasing policies different approval levels for goods, supplies, and services. That's one category versus construction. So it's confusing. It's not the same. You like $10,000 for goods and services and construction, which leads to confusion. And again, isn't a common practice taken. So what I'm looking at doing is streamlining all of that. And I'm going to show you what I'm proposing. And then we'll take a look at what it looks like in our current policy. So this right now is the only thing in the policy that I'm proposing to change, since you were not able to see the red line version. So this is the proposed policy. It is one table that replaces 4 different tables within our current policy. So right now, for example, this first threshold is up to $5,000, which we're going to call a micro purchase. And we're going to say, okay, use buyer's best judgment. So you don't have to go get 3 different quotes. You don't have to hunt down, 3 different vendors to give you prices. And then this level of approval is required by the department. So the department head can approve up to $5,000 in purchases without town administrator approval. Right now it's at $2,500, which again, with inflation and current times, it just $2,500 doesn't buy as much as it used to. So we're looking at increasing the department head approval to $5,000 and then calling it a micro purchase. The next category is still a micro purchase, $5,000 to $10,000, use buyer's best judgment, but it also requires the town administrator. So not only the department head, but also the town administrator. We don't really have that middle tier necessarily. We do kind of for construction versus goods and services, which you'll see in just a bit. The next level is $10,001 to $25,000, and that one would require 3 documented quotes, which I've created a form for staff, which we don't have, to at least document the quotes, because sometimes we get them over email. Sometimes our current policy allows, if you sent it to 3 different people and you get a no response saying, oh, we're not interested, you can still document that on the form. And this kind of documentation is important. In many different cases, if you have a vendor coming back and saying, hey, I want to see what your process was for this, sometimes they can challenge your processes, or even if it's got federal or state funding, they want to see that documentation. So this would be then the end cap of the town administrator's approval limit. So currently, as you'll see, it's $20,000 for construction and $10,000 for goods, services, and supplies. So we're trying to keep it similar. Again, and I can quote some other towns and cities that do that. They don't separate it because it just creates another level of confusion there. And then so anything over 25,000 would be a formal solicitation. So it would be an RFP, request for proposal, RFQ, request for quotes, and then an invitation for bid. Now this depends, the type depends on if it's construction versus non-services, goods, things like that, which in our current policy, it explains it all down at the bottom, which of course we'll relook at it another date just to make sure you can fine tune that and lessen it so it's not as prohibitive as the federal guidelines, unless there's federal funding associated with it, which would be specified and is. So if it's 25,000 or more, Board of Trustees requires the approval, which we typically, any contract, anything like that, you all see it anyways. Yeah. You might see it after the fact if it's under the threshold of, or within the threshold of the town administrator, she might sign it. And then you guys see it as a ratification at a later date. So you typically, see all of that stuff anyways. And then I added a piece about credit card purchases, just because I don't think we should be using our credit cards for over $5,000 unless we have written approval from Victoria. Maybe it's an emergency or something like that. But typically, if it's something, over $5,000, we should really be getting an invoice or something like that. And so we have better documentation. For sure. Yeah. So this is what I'm proposing we do. Here's where it gets muddy, and I'm going to show you what we kind of currently do. And it's in 4 different tables. and they're just cut and pasted out of our current policy. So this is a current policy for goods, supplies, and services. So what this shows is the town administrator limit, and then what is for the board limit. So currently purchases, contracts, they're all different. And I just think that it makes it a little bit confusing. And then, so this is just the different levels. And then there's another table that then shows the procedure that you have to take for each different type of level, which is just by the dollar amount, which again, I think is fairly confusing. So 20,000 is for written quotes. And this is for goods and services. And then over 20,000 is the RFP, which, so for RFP and the proposed, we're just increasing it by $5,000. For construction, on the other hand, it's a little bit different. Whereas it's 20,000 for this piece in purchases and change orders. But then there's a whole other different process mentioned here, which is, again, we're just going to add $5,000 and just keep it all streamlined, whether it's a contract, a service, construction. It just streamlines it and makes it less confusing. And then in the current policy, there's also a section that tells you what all you have to get for every type of written quote or formal solicitation, but really those details are down in the bottom anyway. So it muddied the waters in my personal opinion. So the next steps really are just to discuss it here in the workshop. If desired, I can add these revisions and then do a resolution on consent for the next meeting. And then we'll just continue as staff to revise the purchasing policy in phases as time permits. It's audit season. It's always a season in finance, right? It's either budget, audit, something. So I just think phased approaches are really nice when you have big policies like this, and that way you can get, multiple people involved. But I'm happy to share any of my research of other towns and communities that did submit answers to the survey question, but or answer any questions if you have any.
Okay. Trustee Williams, do you have any questions? We'll see if you go first.
I don't. I do think that all of this looks reasonable to me. Well, I guess I do have a question is, in terms of the limit for the department heads, if our town administrator is comfortable with that limit, I'd just like to hear that from her. But it really, to me, makes a ton of sense, streamlines everything. I don't see why we would need to be looking at anything outside of the one category over 25.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that I see them all anyway, the same, before you do. So I'm comfortable with that, with the price of construction being up about 30% from when we wrote this. It seems reasonable unless, we talked about it. And, if you wanted to set a 4,000 or 4,500, you could do that. But I think we're all seeing things only going one direction. So I'm very much comfortable with that. And I know I meet with my folks every week, one-on-one. So I'm very much aware of what they're buying and we talk about it. So I'm comfortable with it.
Okay. And in that case, I'm actually quite comfortable with the entire thing. I've wondered for quite some time why we weren't streamlined in that regard.
Thank you. Other questions?
Not just only a statement that I'm very much about the best thing that you can do to streamline and make it clear for everybody is the easiest and less likely for mistakes.
Agreed. Yeah. And I have a purchasing card that I'm going to print out to give to everybody so that they, can remember exactly what they need to do for the different thresholds. And I had attempted to create one for the old policy, but it was just
It turn into like a
me
origami.
and I still don't have all the different things memorized. So
I do have a question. When it comes to an emergency type situation like the Eagle Canyon water break,
Yeah.
is there, what happens then if obviously the board can't meet to?
yeah, there is a clause for emergency purchases like that. Typically, definitely you do not have to go out and get 3 bids, if in those cases, it's just kind of let's get it in and get it done and,
Well, Yeah, I'd like to add on to that. One of the things Erin and I would like to do is to go out to have an on-call excavator and an on-call repair for some of those emergency utilities. We have N-Line, they act as that for our electric, but we don't have it for other utilities. So we would like to go out and have that available. Then we have a contract with someone and we know who to call.
Yeah, and that would help with any delays, because I know that was.
But we're careful. I mean, like when Eagle Canyon happened, Erin got 3 guys out there on site fast. 4. And, we selected it not only on price, we also had to go with who could do it now.
Right.
So
Right.
it's not, can't always follow exactly the purchasing policy is intended for, budgeted items.
Just to add then, so what we could have for that on-call, you could have the number of excavators. So I have 4 right now, again, that I have their price list of how much it costs to bring out the big excavator, a backhoe, these different things. And so knowing that, I can say, okay, they're the cheapest one, call them first. Can you come out and do that? If not, call the second one. And sometimes it's okay to get multiple ones if they can both be there, but then if one's, if I can be there at 6 tonight, the other one's at 2, but try to weigh the cost difference
Okay.
there in the emergency.
All right, well, yeah, it'll be interesting to hear that going forward. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
yes, so, I'll plan then to get this reviewed by Brandon and, we'll see it on consent if that's okay, next meeting.
Great.
And I'll have red lines this
Okay.
time.
Okay, now on to the really fun stuff.
Yes, so as you are all aware, we typically have rollover from the prior year. We're still in audit time, so you can never really dial in at the exact number, but I like to give very conservative numbers. Here is each individual operating fund and what I estimate is going to roll from 2023. This amount does take into account anything that we already had budgeted in 2023 that we didn't spend, but still needs to roll into 2024. So wildfire, things like that, stormwater, and then also the additional allocations that have been made thus far. So stream bank restoration, leaf, things like that we've already made. So I may have told you a larger amount last time, and now it's a little bit less because of some of those things. So definitely a good amount. In prior years, if we've had big projects going, I think 2 years ago, we had maybe 2 or 3 big projects going that had pretty big shortfalls, and that's where we utilize this funding. So it's really good use for one-time expenditures, not ongoing expenditures, but one time, just because we then rebudget those expenses typically. If, for example, they're in vacancy savings, we budget to be fully staffed every year, and hopefully we do, but if we don't, then we see expense savings. A lot of this occurred because we did receive revenues that were higher than expected, not necessarily in sales tax, but interest income was huge, of course, last year. I always be really conservative when I budget that, just because we had little to none for so long. And now it just skyrocketed. So again, that's not necessarily an ongoing one that we would want to just rely on, but that was definitely a welcome surprise for 2023. Building revenue was higher. We saw court revenues higher, with more tickets, things like that. So that's kind of what happened there. And then we had a lot of savings in professional services last year. Not having an HR consultant, of course, but also having an engineer on staff saved us quite a bit of money. A lot.
That's
so
wonderful.
that I would say was the majority, with a little bit of vacancy savings, of where our expenditures came in lower last year. So that is where we're talking about this year, and we can kind of come back to this. But what staff did was we had a couple of things that were, as we were building the 2024 budget, as you remember, we couldn't fund all of those capital items, and some of them we had to push. So since then, we've had a couple of things come up that we would like to have your consideration on, some kind of more immediate, and then in the memo, there's a couple of lesser things that you could consider if you wanted, but the major things are here in front of you right now. So we had a replacement truck in the 2024 budget, but again, we're pushed it in hopes for rollover. Since that time, we have one with engine failure. We're total, let's see, it's the 2008 Ford F-150. It's got 93,000 miles. It's been diagnosed with a couple things: camshaft failure, engine valve issue, and then total repairs were estimated at over $9,000, which is likely not probably worth the replacement value on it. So if we were able to move forward, this would be split 50-50 between parks and general fund, and would also be outfitted with a plow that could be removed and used for snowplow purposes.
And I'm sorry, is that price for a new vehicle or for a used vehicle?
This one is a new, and I think at any time we always have discussed, we could look as well for used vehicles. Definitely, we could do that. That's always an option, and that direction, can definitely be given.
Yeah, in case you didn't see in your memo that there was quite a bit of detail on each of these projects. But currently we have 4 of our trucks out of how many trucks? Maybe 6. 4 are between 17 and 21 years old.
Wow.
And we're still driving them, thankfully, because we, stay so local.
Yeah.
But we have 4 that we really can't even take out of town if you wanted to. Not that we need to, but this is one they did have on your list for 24, but he said I could probably get by another year, So this is one item that he would really like to purchase this year if we could, and split it between general fund and parks.
Yeah.
Okay.
And with these equipment replacements, I'd really like to start programming them in instead of waiting for the failures. It's just a good practice as well. Whether we buy brand new or used, it smooths out that the fluctuation of now we have all these other capital purchases, but we have maybe 150,000 in vehicle or equipment replacement that maybe we could have smoothed out, over years. And really, rollover is a good use for that type of stuff, because it's a one-time purchase. The other item is the security cameras and Wi-Fi. We did budget for that in parks and general fund, again, 50-50 split. 50,000 was budgeted in 2024. Since then, they went and got some estimates for that. And if we split 50-50 again, 30,000, we would be able to install the number of recommended cameras and hardware to meet the town's need. Otherwise, we can phase it and add stuff later. But again, it would be split. This expense would be 15,000 from general and 15,000 for parts, and we would get all of the security cameras recommended by the sheriff's office done with that dollar amount.
And that's to all the parks as well.
To all the parks. Well, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have the security cameras, who gets the footage? I mean, I know it's probably in the cloud, but.
It would be in the cloud. We would go out for bids on this. This is a lot of money. So
Yeah.
this would have 3 different proposals submitted on how someone would recommend we do it.
Okay.
We're not that far. We just have their initial estimates based on location and Wi-Fi coverage and things like that.
It'd be really interesting to see how someplace like Estes does it.
Mhm.
So there's
So that's the
that.
second one. And then
And then the third one is a utilities vehicle replacement. This one wasn't on the 2024 replacement. We were gonna try and get by until 2025, but since then, we've had 2 failures, I believe, with our escapes, but the most pressing one is a 2005 with 141,000, and it's not drivable with an apparent transmission issue. So the replacement would be split 3 ways between electric, water, and sewer, but of course, water and sewer is one thing, so we would receive the majority of the cost for that. 50,000 is for a brand new vehicle. However, we could look at anything lesser or used if we were able to find it.
we are definitely, the 2 Ford Escapes, if you don't know, I think they're both 05s. One's 05, one's 06, but they were hand-me-downs from the Boulder County Sheriff's Department. And we bought them for like $3,000. and we've driven them for almost 20 years now, well, since they gave them to us. If we don't replace these, then I'm gonna have to have people driving their own vehicles to work sites, which I don't like. We currently have our engineer driving his personal vehicle to all sites, and I'm not comfortable. So we need to upgrade at least one this year. And like we said, we're happy if the board gives us the nod. We're willing to reach out again. Boulder County and Longmont are both now on, they're on fleet systems, so they're upgrading their own regularly, and I don't think they have the kind of inventory they used to just say, here, you can have this one.
Do we ever consider leasing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we can.
I mean, what a great opportunity to maybe get something electric.
Yep,
That's what I'm
we
saying.
totally agree.
Bet Edward Keene could help us.
I bet Edward King would love to help us.
We totally agree.
Discounts for them. Yeah, especially with the amount of driving you do around town.
Yeah,
We do a lot of just like the code compliance, does a lot of just in town, but the engineer and Aaron do a lot of on-site to construction and things like that. So we want to make sure they can get out during snowstorms and things.
They have electric trucks,
Yeah,
SUVs.
awesome. No, we would love to
get one of those
that.
cyber trucks.
Yeah.
But we needed to at least get this in front of you now that we know what we have for carryover. This would be done via a budget adjustments.
Yeah, we would do a budget amendment at a later date.
And yeah,
So we can get direction, or we discuss now, get direction during the meeting, and then, we would just carry it forward with a budget amendment where we can bring a lot of, various budget amendments together at once.
And then you have other priorities as well.
Yeah, I just listed a couple of other things that staff talked about. One of them was the curb gutter and on-street parking improvements on Railroad. Initially, we had that in as 55,000, but after talking with Justin, he really thinks that we need to look at that dollar amount, for the drainage piece. And then just a reminder that with sidewalk funding, we did put 170,000 in the 2024 budget. I think we had it in at a higher amount initially, and then we ratcheted it down. Same with wayfinding and the streets capital transfer. Those are the things that we kind of had to play with the dollar amounts, to make the budget piece of it work. So those I was just really wanting to remind everybody of. If you wanted additional discussion on that, then.
yeah, if you want to supplement any of those.
Then we could do that as well.
Okay.
And the other option is you put it all in reserves.
Yes, otherwise it all goes to fund,
Fund
of course,
balance.
it always goes to fund balance and then can be used and reappropriated at any time, really via budget amendment, similar to what we're doing now, or we save it and we allocate it, build it up to use with the 2025 budget.
So a question, and I apologize if this might seem like it's coming out of left field, but with the incredibly sharp rise in commercial property taxes that folks are really hurting over,
Yes.
is there any precedent for somehow helping either business, commercial property owners and or residents with a sharp rise in property taxes through an allocation from the general fund?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. I think I would rely on Brandon's expertise on that, but that is a really good question.
Brandon?
So we can't directly disperse money to private businesses or residents. There's a section of the Colorado Constitution that says that government can't make donations to, to anything other than, other government entities and nonprofit entities. Sorry. That being said, I mean, just because we can't give like a tax refund, we can do other things, right? We can do revolving loan funds, financing grants, other types of funding, but we just can't distribute money. That's basically the issue. We can't donate money to people.
I would love to see some ideas from staff about what we can do that would be proper. I think, yeah. Anybody else? Questions, comments?
I have some feedback. I definitely, it's a personal thing that we do in our own family, but have had very good success with buying pre-owned vehicles. That you could get like 19,000 miles and it's like a brand new vehicle, but you're saving so much money and then doing an extended warranty or something. So
Yes,
I am more of a fan of that than buying brand new for town vehicles.
I think that, yeah, I agree. You lose or you get rid of a lot of the immediate depreciation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you do that,
It's
that's for sure.
significant.
And would also be interested in seeing, some potential lease options and what, incentives are available for electric vehicles.
Yeah, because even Edward said there's incentives for used electric vehicles also.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and we're getting new chargers.
Right.
I'm waiting for someone to say an e-bike. They're just staring on me.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And this is on the agenda for discussion and direction if you're ready to give it tonight.
Great. Great, okay. Well, if there's nothing else, we'll take a break before 7 o'clock start time. Okay, sound good? Thank you very
Yes, it's great to see a full boardroom again. So appreciate that. We already did the roll call and the Pledge of Allegiance, so I'll go ahead and read the land acknowledgement. We must acknowledge with respect as non-native people that the land on which we stand, live and learn is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. We also recognize the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote.
And that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We'll take a reflective moment of silence, please. Thank you, everybody. And we'll move on to audience business. I think what we'll do tonight, there's a sign up sheet, correct?
Yes.
Okay, has everybody signed up who would like to speak tonight? Why don't you come on ahead and do that? And then when you come to the podium, we no longer have a microphone. We have our little owl friend here. And so you'll please state your name and address for the record. I think most of you know the drill. And then you will have 3 minutes. The board won't respond immediately, but we may respond during our trustee reports. And then after we're finished with the folks in the room, we'll go to the folks online. And while we're finishing up in room, folks online, if you'd like to speak, you can indicate that by putting yourself on video, raising a virtual hand, waving at us, and we'll have you do the same thing, name and address for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
First is Brian Darnell, and then next after him is David Chilson.
Brian Donnell, 395 Vasquez Court, 25-year resident. I will be very brief. The commitment or the response that we've been hearing from the DOT, and it's going to be discussed tonight, but talking about slowing down on the process and allowing for community buy-in to where we can express our concerns about the IGA. We sincerely appreciate that because there are several of us that have many concerns. And I do hope to see, I know, having been involved in government and big business, corporate things, we don't want to tie things up in committee, but I do hope that we can get representatives from the different parts of town, as small a committee as we can get, but we do want to have that kind of representation so we can find common ground and get more buy-in for the IGA going forward. And I sincerely appreciate your time and efforts to that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
David Chilson and then Kelly Sproul.
Hello, my name is David Chilson. I'm at 731 Second Avenue. I've been here 24 years. I just wanted to thank all of you for doing what you do for so little appreciation and money. And you're all neighbors first and then decision makers second. I don't know all the ins and outs because I haven't studied it as much as so many other people have, but I guess my request is twofold. One is that the IGA be amended so that the county in this agreement can't subdivide the properties that are under question. That should be done on our side. And then the other thing that should be done is that we can, as a board, change the 5-acre rule to a 0-acre rule or a 1-acre rule if we want to let 1 acre come in with a board recommendation. So those are the two things that I'd like to see happen so that we're not in this position, which I think is kind of a strange position of petitioning how the town grows. It should be more a public vote in general and less of a board vote. because it's something that impacts us for generations. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Kelly Sproul and then Mark Browning.
Hi, Kelly Sproul, 415 Baptist Court. Reflecting from the last period, want to make sure to thank you guys, especially representing the group that kind of formed itself through our growing interest that's become Lions Citizens for Responsible Development. It's, doesn't go unnoticed how much the town does, and especially in this small time of becoming more involved, which I'm glad that I have, because it feels good to become more a part of what's going on in our town. Especially having, hopes and dreams for the community that my family's growing up in. I really value this process and getting to become more aware of what everybody does for the town. And so thank you for everything that you guys do. And I hear, from one of the trustees that it feels like a thankless job, and that's not anything any of us want to wake up to beyond parenthood. I want to reflect sort of the efforts of our group over the last couple of weeks, which I don't want to read fully because this goes on and on, but we do really appreciate feeling heard by Mayor Rogan over the last week, especially, acknowledging that there is kind of a misalignment between the comp plan and the IGA draft. And we really appreciate that it sounds like there is a change from trying to adopt the current IGA. And we really support the idea of the task force, which would include citizen representation, from multiple areas around town. Personally, since stepping into, kind of by not fully intentional, but just the nature of how one thing like the next, it's been a little hard feeling like, our intentions and efforts are very selfish, which they're not. I wake up in the morning and I don't tend to myself. I tend to my children, and then I check in with my parents, and I check in with my grandparents. I step out of my door and I'm not thinking about myself just in the world. I'm thinking about my community and how to make it a bigger, better place. And everybody's homes that I've gotten to visit, because this has really brought us together. It's like, yeah, how do we grow? Because growth is essential and growth is inevitable, and evolution in a way that's mindful and tending to all the layers of, from financial to people who need homes, to this income level, to that income level, and economically, the commercial elements of town that really go hand in hand with residential growth. Over the last couple of weeks, one of the big things with the creation of our group was really the challenge around the transparency of, conversations pre sort of February and then that after. So we are very hopeful going forward that that evolves into just being able to work more together. And we appreciate that that's been spoken. And the last thing I want to share, over the last week, we had kind of a pre-petition that was developed. It states many Lions residents have expressed serious concerns about the draft land use intergovernmental agreement with Boulder County. If the proposed draft IGA is approved, we, the undersigned, intend to submit a referendum to give voters an opportunity to repeal the IGA. And within, less than a week, there were over 100 signatures that we received. It seems like there's no need for this to go any steps further. We wanted to just share that, we're in thicker company than just a couple of us that are showing up here and there. And we look forward to being able to be a part of the conversation moving forward.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Mark Browning and then Roger Plum.
Good evening, I'm Mark Browning, I live at 633 First Avenue. When a school board wants to pass a bond issue, and the main purpose is to build a brand new high school or a brand new middle school in a fast growing area of the district, it doesn't just put those two things on the ballot and have it voted district wide. The common strategy is, give something for every place in the district, you know, a new computer room here, every playground set here. And you generate votes from the whole district, and that's how you pass bond issues. The draft IGA as it exists now does the polar opposite of that. It gives almost every area of Lyons a good reason to vote against the IGA. And as you just heard, there are plenty of citizens signed to a petition to put this to a referendum. This IGA, you know what people in the northern part of town have said. You were at the meetings. Stone Canyon residents were at those meetings concerned about the Hawkins property. It's been suggested there could be a 3-story building built on the Harkless Beehive property at the bottom of Miley Street. That neighborhood's not going to like that, nor will the confluence across the street. Finally, a suggested 2-acre development at the back of Lyons Valley Park to be accessed by an easement through Lyons Valley Park risks further alienating the largest neighborhood in town with the most voters in town. It's clear that this will go to a referendum if it's passed in its current form, and it will be repealed if it goes to there. So the choices are really two. Send this to a task force, as Mayor Rogan has recommended, task force that includes citizens, and let's fix it. Or pass it as it is right now, that's the other choice, and watch it get repealed by citizens, and then you'll be left with no IGA at all. I think the choice is clear, so do the right thing and send this to the citizen task force. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening, everyone. Roger Flynn at 1010 Steamboat Valley Road. I'm also a business owner, 440 Main Street, number 2. Glad to see the mayor with the laryngitis getting better, so I really appreciate that. And all your work and listening to us at the 2 library meetings. We really appreciated that. I served 8 years on the PCDC, 6 years on the board of Lyons Community Foundation. But importantly, during the PCDC, it was before and after the flood. It was when we did the 2012 IGA. Lots of meetings. I remember sitting with Mayor Van Domelen many times talking about that. It was not done in secret or anything like that. And the development and growth are some of the biggest issues that a town considers. It's our current and it's our future. And in a way, it's our past. What the town is, in many ways, is why we moved here. I'm 20 years, almost 20 years here with my family. And so it's a monster issue, maybe bigger than almost anything you do. It shouldn't be rushed. I think the 100+ citizens, my wife has not yet signed it yet. She's been out of town. And so I think I support the go slow approach mentioned. I think I didn't hear any objections at the last Monday meeting at the library. I also support the mayor's brief discussion that the task force or working group, whatever you want to call it, will be run and constituted by the next board. I think that makes sense. I think a member or 2 of the BOT said the next board should do that. That makes sense. It doesn't make sense. I'm assuming that you're not going to sign the IGA in the next board meeting before the election or right after the election. I hope that's not a wrong assumption. But I appreciate the statements that it should be the next board to be decide the members of the task force, the scope, the sort of, how that's going to work. That makes sense. They're going to be the ones in charge. If you are going to push the task force, do the task force, it's going to be the next BOT. We've got a very consequential election. Some of you will be there, maybe not all, we'll see. And lastly, I support the statement by the mayor. I checked my notes today to make sure. I'm a lawyer, I don't do land use, but I checked my notes. And the mayor and at least 1 or 2 board members said that they would not support allowing the county in the IGA. The current one certainly was a bad one, but in the future one, that you would allow in the IGA the county to subdivide, what they call the subdivision exemption process. Why would we allow the county to do that so we could avoid the 5-acre rule? I think no one said we want to avoid the 5-acre rule in the IGA. So hopefully, for those of you who are going to still be sitting here in a few weeks, that the IGA, when it comes out of the task force, the recommendation says the county cannot do the subdivision exemption process to avoid the 5-acre vote. I mean, I think no one said, I'm in favor of getting rid of the 5-acre vote. No one in the BOT said that. And so I think we can't allow the county to do that. Again, I really appreciate your listening to us and taking this go slow approach. And I look forward to, citizen input on that task force, because I think it should be open to citizen involvement. I really look forward to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard.
Next I have five, I can't read your last name, I'm sorry.
Cool. Thanks. 501's, Carter Court is my address and, I'm just present too, like you guys are dealing with some very heavy issues right now. It's very intense in here. And I just want to appreciate you guys for like, it's a lot. It's a lot going on in here. I came here I moved here actually 4 years ago. I was homeless and I moved here. I was newly homeless and I brought a painting with me of my cousin who was a Lyons resident who had died in January of that year. And I brought as many of his friends as I could find from Lyons and as many people as I could bring, actually, people that didn't even know him, to the Labyrinth. And we had a gathering at the Labyrinth and we talked and we shared stories and we cried and we bead with each other and we shared this kind of transparent, just very authentic space with one another. And then we lit this painting on fire and it's just a very ceremonious, profound experience that had me stay here and be here and like know that this is where I need to be. And we continued to gather together after that time in May. Every month we would gather and then we came together on the first weekend of May every year after that. And we called it what we were doing because we would come together kind of without labels and without an agenda and without money exchange, just being and creating together. We called it Beyond Word, and we committed to it as a thing, as just a place that we need to stand. We want to now, like, this is something that and by we I mean the people, like I mean you. Even though you might not have been to a fire or a gathering yet, but this is a thing that we're doing now. As last year, Holly proclaimed it a holiday. And this year, we're just gonna keep doing it. The 8 Lodge is gonna have a appreciation ceremony on Saturday night. This is May 4th and 5th. So that whole weekend is going to be a celebration of being together and celebration of the space between us, because we get into these super heavy, intense things going on and we just need to stop and say, dude, you're awesome. You know, like I appreciate you for just being in this space of existing with me, you know? So just to pause. Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Fi. We appreciate you.
Next I have Danny LaFever.
Hey, good job. Impressive.
Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Board of Trustees, Citizens Alliance. Some of you may remember me from last week at the Q&A. I stood up, kind of caught off guard.
I'm so sorry. Could you state your address for the record?
I live at 725 Silverberry Court in Lafayette. I am not a citizen of Lyons. I'm a realtor here in Boulder County. Address there is 1035 Pearl Street.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So again, I introduced myself last week at the library. I'm a realtor here in Boulder. I was contacted a long time ago, June of 2022, by Lee Connor, the owner of the Connor property. She inherited her land by her father. And some of you may have already heard this, so forgive me, but I just wanted to reintroduce myself and tell you how I got here. She told me about her hopes and dreams for her father's land. At first, I was kind of like, this is a long shot. This is never going to happen. But I was open to exploring it because I'm passionate. I'm passionate about all things real estate, about housing, about helping people find homes. I love this town of Lyons as well, a lot, just like a lot of you. And I saw it as an opportunity to usher in maybe a new era of Lyons and to be a conduit to what could be possible. Prior to real estate, I was in the restaurant industry. I moved here as a single mother, wanting to raise my son in this like-minded community of Boulder, surrounded by beauty and nature. I have a lot of the same feelings that a lot of these folks have about this place. At one point, I lived in affordable housing. It was there. I was able to save money, get my real estate license. I bought a house a year ago in Lafayette. So with all that said, I would have been working with Lee pro bono investigating the potential development. It was brought to our attention in 2022. There was maybe a window of opportunity. The IGA was being renegotiated. And so I started painting a very elementary view of what could be. Putting in hours of work, talking with Lee, and really we just were kind of like dreaming it up and creating a vision. But the underlying message the entire time has been to retain the neighborhood's essence, to retain the core of what Lyons is, and to ensure that her father would be proud of something that she would do. We understand that, like, you know, those homes were not affordable homes, but at this point we've come to, I think, a fork in the road where we need to start thinking about doing things a little more sustainably and for everyone. So I believe that growth is inevitable. It's already happening here in Lyons with lots of different developments, but the state and local governments are getting involved. And they feel like what we're doing is unsustainable too. So I feel like as a small town and her having such heartstrings for the land in this place, she would be a perfect person to explore these ideas. The messaging thus far has been mostly against growth due to safety issues and other issues that homeowners already face. My question is, what if we could go to the drawing board and make this a plan for the future, for the people and for the greater good of this entire community, living and working in Lyons, for the thousands of people who were displaced 10 years ago in the flood, and for the thousands of working families who only wish to accomplish the American dream of owning a home. We've considered all of this as part of our vision. It would be my honor and hope to deliver a plan, not only one for equality within this community, but one that would set an example throughout Colorado, such as mountain communities like Eagle, Steamboat, and Buena Vista, adopting and implementing plans in beautiful communities that serve as pillars of the community's workforce.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you
Was
so
that more
much.
than 4 minutes?
Three. But you did really well. Thank you.
Appreciate you all. I was gonna say thank you for your hard work as well. I know it's a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else in the room?
No one else has signed up and there's 2 hands raised on.
Okay, anybody else in the room like to address the board before we move online? No? Okay, I think it says Kathy's iPad. If you could turn your video on, turn your sound on, and state your name and address for the record, please. Okay. Well, we will come back to Kathy then, and we'll go to Lee Connor, please.
We go. Great. My video was blocked before. All right. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Lee Connor, and I live at 5150 Foothill Boulevard in San Diego, California. I wish that I could be there in person today, but I'm grateful to virtually attend the meeting. For those of you that don't know me, my dad is John Connor, and I inherited 1022 Horizon Drive from him when he unfortunately passed away in 2022. So before I jump into it, I want to thank the board for all of your dedication to Lyons. Again, this has been a lot to manage, and I also want to thank everyone else for sharing your opinions. So as many of you know, my dad dedicated the majority of his career to building beautiful places for people to live in Lyons. His passion not only created work for himself, but for many of his friends who are the skilled tradespeople that built the homes that many of you live in today. In fact, I even helped my dad build decks and finish basements at a few of your homes. I will always cherish those memories with my dad. Over the past few weeks, we have all heard the concern that many of you have with the IGA plan. And I wanted to just take a minute to share my dad's perspective. After the subdivision on Vasquez and Horizon Drive was completed, my dad always dreamed of developing his land. He wanted to continue to build beautiful homes with his friends. And he also knew that there were many other potential benefits to developing his property. I want to ask you, what if following his dream actually added property value and created other benefits for the town of Lyons? I think, you know, some of those skilled tradespeople who built those homes in Lyons also lost their homes in the flood, and they haven't been able to move back to Lyons. They live in other communities and commute to Lyons. What if we were able to provide housing for those important community members? And I think, we've just started to explore what the possibilities are if we develop this property. We're not sure if it's even viable at this point. All that the IGA changes give us is a chance to explore. What I do know for certain is that my dad's land is his legacy. My dad lived in many places, but his favorite place is Lyons, and I would never do anything but honor his legacy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now I see Kathy's iPad. The camera is on. Sir, if you could state your name and address for the record, then you'll have 3 minutes. And you need to unmute.
Here you go. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, my name is Rob Boone, and I live in Cheyenne, Wyoming now. And but the property in question is my dad's property at 1117 Fifth Avenue in Lyons. And anyway, I'm Rob Boone. Some of you may know me. I ran Lyons Excavating for 38 years in town there with my wife, and our dad moved to Lyons when he was 9 years old. And he purchased the Brody Court. That was back in 1941. And he purchased the Brody Quarries on Fifth Avenue there in the 80s, early 80s. And it was approximately 140 acres at that time. And without going into a lot of detail, he split the property in a couple different spots. And eventually John Connor and Raul Vasquez bought 40 acres and built that subdivision and had to go through all the annexing and everything. And it was quite a deal back then. And but then they built that whole subdivision, and I think it's a good asset to the town. And anyway, our dad passed away 2 years ago, and my 3 sisters and I inherited the property. And our preference would be to keep the property and split it in 4 ways, build our own homes and live there. But with Boulder County's 35-acre rules, we know that isn't going to happen. So we listed the property a little over a year ago, and we were super excited to hear that Markel Homes was interested in buying it. I personally worked for Markel Homes for several years out in Lyons Valley Park, digging basements and putting in water and sewer lines and stuff. And man, they do quality work and very professional. And it was a great deal for, it was a good experience for us to work with them. They do a great product, and they're known for it in Boulder County. And anyway, we were excited that he was, wanted to take it on. And we didn't know anything about it. We knew that the IGA was up for negotiation, but we were not aware that these meetings were taking place, and much less what would be proposed about our property. We learned this, as you did, less than a month ago. We like the idea of the upper portion of the property staying as it is, more or less a green belt, with a small 5-acre annexation and subdivision down at the bottom end on the south end. We think that would be a really good asset for the town. And so there's a small lake up at the upper end of the property where, there's a lot of wildlife, and it's a beautiful place. Would make an awesome park. Maybe the town and the county could go together and work on that, for the town's people.
Mr. Boone, I'm so sorry. Your 3 minutes is passed up here, but we thank you so much for your comments.
Oh, well, thanks.
Thank you. Would anyone else online like to speak? You can raise your virtual hand.
Also submit.
Yeah, you can also submit your, if you weren't able to finish your statements, please feel free to submit them to the board. Excuse me. Okay, we're good. I think we're good then. All right. Thank you, everybody. We will move on to staff reports. Boulder County Sheriff's Office, please.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, Cody.
Not a whole lot, just, there's been a lot of complaints about that trailer and Bobcat or backhoe on Third and Park. It's sitting there because they're trying to finish up some work. So we're trying to get a hold of the contractor to, the problem with it right now, he doesn't have a license plate on it, so. We hear all the complaints, we're working with them and, hopefully they'll be, out of there by the end of the month. Then our animal protection supervisor sent out a letter, like a kind of reminder about the reasons animals need to be on leashes, just for their safety and everyone else's safety. So they're out and, you know, they want to see compliance. They don't want to give out tickets, but tickets are slightly up for that. So just a reminder to keep your dogs on a leash. Our county, I guess sheriff's office, IT people are working on a new staff program for us, so hopefully it'll be, I have to spend less time on gathering stats and it'll be a little clearer for you guys. And so that's in the process. They sent me a link to it and it's just not all up to date quite yet. So hopefully by next meeting, we'll have some good stats for you guys. Going into stats, our calls so far this year are up about 70 from this time last year. At 561. Tickets are at 153 with up 5 from last year. Accidents are up quite a bit, 7 total from 3 this time last year, which are just minor, just mostly parking lots or, you know, minor fender benders, nothing serious. Going back into the calls, so our traffic stops were about 150 this year, which is up 14 from last year. Big increases are extra patrols in like the parks and around town are up 87 from last year at 178. Property crimes are down from 10 to 1. Oh, good. Knock on wood. Person crimes are also down, and that's like assaults, harassments, domestics are down 5 from last year. Medical and fire calls are down quite a bit. They're down 21. Another good one is our mental health calls or suicides, suicidal people or attempts we have 0 so far this year, and we have, that's down from 30 from last year. And then with Flock, so I'm actually working on the permits right now, so hopefully we'll keep going. So hopefully they're soon. I'm trying a few roadblocks on some of the placements, but we're working through it. The weekend reads, last weekend, the 9th and 10th was the busiest, about 10,500 people came into town. And then the average for the weekends so far or in March was about 9,400. So, which the average Saturday and Sundays from this time last year is about the same. So average Saturday is about 5,200 and Sundays is 4,200. That is about all I have for you guys tonight.
Oh, it's good news. Any questions for Sergeant Sears? I have one question. How much is the dog off leash ticket? Just out of curiosity.
They're with this, it's like $25 surcharge, I think, but I think the first offense is $75.
Oh, that's not cheap.
So, yeah. And then if it's your third one, you have to go to court. So I think the second one's close to double, around 150 or so.
Okay.
50, so, but it's not the tickets or the fines, it's just fines and just safety of the animals, so.
Yeah.
And people. And I will work better on getting you guys the stats ahead of time. I'm off Thursdays, and then when I have SWAT training on Wednesdays, it's hard for me to pull them like almost a week sooner, so that way I can give you more accurate stats. So.
Okay. Well, it sounds like the trends are encouraging. So thank you so much. Thanks to your team and be safe.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay,
Administrator's report, please.
Thank you. I think all of you know the last couple of weeks have been very time consuming with a variety of issues taking the forefront, including attending lots of public meetings regarding the IGA. The rezoning recommendations for Boulder County are the candidates forum, election preparation, which I want to thank Clerk Vasquez for getting her ballots out in such a great fashion. They're coming in now already. And so that will be continuing over these next few weeks to take priority, of course. Do want to note 3 grant updates that I'd like to give the board. The first one is that we have been notified by Senator Hickenlooper's staff that the congressionally directed spending request we made in 22 for the 23 year was just awarded. And that is an $800,000 contribution to the St. Vrain Corridor Trail. So with that, there will not have to be any town funds expended on the trail if you accept that CDS grant when we get the paperwork from them. So the other thing is, as a reminder, that we will be going out for bid on that now. And we need to be under construction by, I want to say that correctly, just a minute. We need to advertise for construction no later than July 1st. So we should have a pretty good idea over the next 3 months what the final project looks like and cost. The second grant that we recently applied for is the next round of congressionally directed spending. That's for the 2025 year. And so we did submit a request, with the initial request anyway, we haven't gotten to the full application, for $2 million for the sewer interceptor improvements, which is storm drainage interception on the north side of town. So that will be going out. And then I believe we noted last time that the town and the fire protection district applied for a $50,000 grant to update the community wildfire protection plan, and that was granted. And so we are now working with the fire protection district and the county who's funding this to get that updated, as it has to be updated within 10 years to be able to apply for any state or federal funding for wildfire mitigation. So it's really critical. This is the first step, and it's now been granted. So we're excited about those 3 opportunities coming up. We do want to mention too that the steering committee for the North Foothills Bikeway feasibility study has been meeting, and they've set quite a proactive public meeting schedule. So we want to make sure people know what's coming up there. There will be public meetings regarding the feasibility of a trail between Boulder and Lyons along Foothills Highway that will connect up with our new St. Vrain Trail. They'll be meeting with bike advocates in April, as well as one remote public meeting in April. They will host an in-person meeting at the Town of Lyons Library on April 30th. So we'll get an opportunity to give our input directly at that, followed by county parks and open space advisory committees, CDOT, etc. And then they want to be able to present to the county commissioners August 1st of what they're recommending for that connection between the 2 communities. A couple events coming up. We are Kim and Sustainable Futures Commission are working on Earth Day events planned for April 21st. So be watching for those. Lots of fun things for the families to get involved with. The EVC is going to start working on their updated strategic planning. So again, that's important for the community to know and business owners to get involved now as they start that process with Colorado Main Street program. And congratulations to Kim. The Lions Main Street program has been recognized as nationally accredited now. So long time coming on that one. Press release will be going out on that next week. And for all the artists out there, we have put out a call for artists for the creative outlets, which are the painting of the utility and electric boxes in town. So, and last reminder, go meet the new fire chief, Chief Stump, this Saturday, or Saturday, the 23rd, between 9 and 11. Any questions? Comments?
Okay, good news. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Clerk Fescus or Director Kaplan, could you tilt the screen in this way a little bit? I want to make sure that we can see Trustee Williams. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Hello. Okay, legal update, please, Attorney Dimmer.
Oh, we have a finance update too.
Oh, I'm
sorry, I should have.
It'll be brief, just,
Okay.
because I'm here. So I presented in, the packet, just an update through February 29th of 2024. And I just kind of, I'll briefly go over it. I don't need to show the screen or anything, but sales tax came in, which was nice for the sales of January at 28.5% higher than 2023. Although the one thing to note about 2023 is it was skewed a little bit low because we had a late sales tax payment at that time. And then we also had given some refunds for somebody who had corrections on their sales tax. So it is somewhat skewed. However, if you would have taken out those things, we still would have been a little bit higher. So that's definitely something positive to look forward to. The other piece of that is we will see sales tax trending a little bit higher, hopefully just because of that vendor fee that we took out. So that's definitely something that's positive. Of that, 56% was from local businesses. So that's definitely very good. We typically don't see that high in the month of the earlier months. So that's definitely something positive for us. The other thing that I just wanted to note in your packet is I'm taking a little bit different approach on how I'm reporting, in that I'm reporting expenditures and revenues as a percent of the entire year's budget instead of just trying to average or guess what we think, you know, the monthly budget should be. But really, I feel like it shows a better percentage of this is how much of the total budget for the year, because that's truly what is important, is that we don't go over the total budget for the year. Or as revenue, then you can see the total revenue that's been collected versus what we budgeted for the whole year. I think that that gives a better illustration. However, I did include slides that compare revenue and expenditures to the prior year, so you can see how we're kind of trending towards that. There's nothing alarming. Sometimes there's timing of payments that create some differences, but this, for this time period, there's definitely nothing alarming for either of those. And you can take a look at those at your leisure, but I think that's really all I had. I was more excited about the sales tax.
Exciting.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Questions for Director Eystone?
I don't have any questions, but I actually really did like the new graph.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that that was really great to see. And I'm curious to see how that's going to go, what
Yes.
it will look like throughout the year.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Eystone. Attorney Dittman.
Thank you so much, Mayor Rogan. I just have one update for the Board of Trustees. It's a Supreme Court case, which is relevant to our operations. So last Friday, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled the case of Lidkey v. Freed. And this was a case all about the use of social media by elected officials. So a very relevant topic for all of us in the Board of Trustees. The good news is that the Supreme Court came to a decision that is very consistent with what our existing social media policy was in the town of Lyons. Essentially, the Supreme Court had two different holdings, really part of a test about when an official using social media can be considered a state actor and therefore subject to all the First Amendment protections that come with that. And the first, part of that was the person had, the duty to or the ability to speak on the government entity's behalf. And so for people that were lower level government officials that don't have any sort of authority to speak on behalf of that entity, you would not, be subject to the First Amendment protections potentially. Second, and this is, something that's, I think really important for us in our social media policy is that if there is a disclaimer that, the views exercised on your private pages is, your own private personal opinion rather than that of the organization, that it creates a heavy, though not irrefutable presumption that all the posts on the page were personal. And so that's a really good practice to continue doing in accordance with our social media policy. If you're making personal posts to make sure about public business, to make sure that they're labeled as a personal opinion rather than that of the town alliance, to keep you out of that First Amendment, kind of world. What the court also said, and later on in the discussion about social media use by public officials, that it's important to keep in mind, against consistent with what we've been preaching for a long time in Lions, is that you really should be separating your personal and public accounts, and that if you were to use a public account as a private social media page or vice versa, you do so at according to the Supreme Court, you expose yourself and the organization to a greater liability. And so just keep those accounts delineated as much as possible. Use your public accounts for public business and your private accounts for private business. And if you do speak on something that's before the town on your private accounts, just make sure it comes with a disclaimer saying that it was your own personal opinion, not the town alliance. Because if you don't do that, what this case was all about was this public official blocked an individual from from calling on their private social media page. In that case, you could be alleged to have violated the First Amendment of the United States Constitution by doing that. So that if you kind of cross the streams, if you will, you can have all those First Amendment protections attached to your personal account, and you can subject yourself to liability. And there has been a number of these cases, really since 2016, and now they're being brought by organizations that advocate on behalf of free speech. And so just keep on doing what we say we're going to do in the social media policy. So I think from that perspective, at least, is good news for us. I'm happy to answer any questions about, the decision or social media policy in general.
Thank you very much. Questions for Attorney Dittman? I have a suggestion, and that is, would you be willing to send over some boilerplate disclaimer language that trustees can use?
Yeah, and there's already some in the policy, I believe, too. So I'll be happy to send over the policy again, and point out that language.
Yeah, thank you. I think that'd be a good refresher. I appreciate it. Okay, let's move on to ordinances and public hearings. Tonight we have a second reading and public hearing of ordinance 1158, an ordinance of the town of Lyons, Colorado, amending section 13-2-80 of the Lyons Municipal Code regarding the reimbursement rate for customers in the customer-owned generation COG program. Staff report, please.
Hello, Mayor and trustees. So to reiterate what we went over at the last meeting, there haven't been any changes. There weren't any recommended changes to the first reading of the ordinance. But again, this would change the municipal code. That's where the town currently reimburses those who receive electricity back from the town because they have solar production. Let me start over. So currently the town reimburses customers at the green energy rate that Mean pays, that we pay Mean. So we'd be paying them the same rate we pay Mean for green energy. There's also a rate that's called the avoided cost rate. This is a rate that utilities set based on how much cost they avoid by not buying an hour of electricity. So there's these two different rates. Usually the green rate has been higher than the avoided cost rate, but this year the avoided cost rate Mean put out will be higher than the green rate. So we would be reimbursing people at a higher rate if we allow to use the green rate or the avoided cost rate when we reimburse customers. So this ordinance is to change the wording of the code to say that the town will reimburse customers at the higher of the green rate or the avoided cost rate that means set. Based on last year's numbers, we estimate the 74 customers currently in that plan who have solar in total would receive an additional, so about $1,000 back to all of the customers, paying them 1 cent more per kilowatt hour, which is the difference between the green rate and the avoided cost rate. Sorry, that was a little more jumbled than I wanted it to
That's
be.
okay. Excuse me, questions for Director Kaplan?
I'm curious, is that figured monthly or is it annually? So when they get paid back, is it at the end of the year then, I guess?
It depends when. So when the rate changed back in November of 2020, or the policy change, those who were on this policy prior to November of 2020 actually accrue up throughout the year how much credit and debit they have of electricity. And at the end of the year, that rate gets calculated. Those who actually had it installed after November of 2020, it's an immediate change. So every kilowatt you put back to us, you get a credit of that money right away on that month's bill. There's really two individual meters. One is counting how much you take from the town and you pay the retail rate that we charge. And another meter on the same device is counting how much electricity you give back to the town. And so that one would then change from this green rate to the avoided cost rate. So for new customers, they would see it each month, for the old ones annually.
If I could just say something too, and I don't know if it's changed, but we never actually issued checks to anyone. It shows up as a credit on their bill. So the town isn't actually paying out the end of the year or anything. That just shows up as a credit on their solar bill, utility bill.
Thank you. Other questions?
Yeah, so I just like to clarify. So when you say total reduction, what you're saying is spread it out, the $1,000 in reduction would be spread out amongst the 74 customers, correct?
Thank you for that clarification. Other questions? Okay, then I will open the public hearing. Would anybody like to testify? Come on up, Roger.
Hi, Roger Flynn, 1010 Steamboat Valley Road. I hadn't planned on talking about this. I teach natural resource law at the law school down there. I follow this stuff. I think if we can support in any way, I haven't looked at the details, support people to invest in solar and other things. I mean, it's with property taxes going up and everything, as you know. I think that would be a good idea if the folks can get a little bit more money in their pocket, particularly if they put an investment to put solar. We don't have solar in ours, someday hopefully, but I think that would be a good policy. Again, I don't know the details, but I think a little more money in folks' pocket to help them with their investment. I think that'd be a good idea.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? If you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record.
Yes, Jacob Beard, 1055 Fifth Avenue. Is this an appropriate forum to talk about the IGA?
No.
Okay.
You missed it, sorry.
Oh, I missed it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Anybody else? Don't see anybody online. Okay, so I will close the public hearing and I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve ordinance 1158 on second reading. An ordinance of Town of Lyons amending the COG reimbursement rate.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Well, sure. Actually, I'm glad that one of our audience members spoke up because as an investor in solar power, I do believe that there should be some help or some credit or some kind of support. It is a huge investment and it is harnessing solar energy. And I feel like anything we can do to support or incentivize people putting solar panels on their roofs, I think it's a step in the right direction.
Thank you.
I actually do have a question for Aaron, Director Kaplan. So we can only get 5% of our electricity outside of Maine. So if a lot of people put up solar panels and we got extra electricity coming from them, does that count towards that 5%?
So to clarify, it's the town of Lyons itself, and it can, invest in its own renewable generation. We can't necessarily just go outside of Mead and get 5% of electricity. But if the town has its own renewable resource to produce electricity, like solar, we can have up to 5% in what they call distributed generation. That's town-owned directly, so that has no bearing. Everyone in town could still get solar based on that policy and not affect the 5% that the town owns directly. Now, I should emphasize, though, there is a physical limitation. We can't have something that produces enough electricity that it goes out beyond our substation. With WAPA, the Western Area Power Administration, and the whole administration of that, that gets much bigger, and that would require a lot more infrastructure built into it. So I don't know if you've heard the term curtailment. It happens a lot in wind. You can't produce more electricity than gets consumed, or you have to actually turn it off. So that is one concern. If everybody in town was trying to get solar, in the afternoons, we'd have so much electricity coming out, we'd have to stop it, and it would take more work and more money to stop it. That's the big push, at least from my perspective, and the utility board also, with storage, and why our project included storage, because then you could produce it all, put it in storage, and use it at night.
Thank you, Erin. Did you have a comment? Okay. No? Any other comments? No? I agree with Mr. Flynn and Trustee Dottie. I think anything we can do to incentivize is great. And so I will call for the vote.
And that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Would you please read consent into the record for Trustees?
Yes. Item 1 is resolution 2024-24, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving the 7th Amendment to the Professional Services Agreement with Consort Engineers Incorporated for on-call engineering services. Item 2 is resolution 2024-27, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, ratifying an agreement with Providence LLC for the purchase of 4 Lake McIntosh Reservoir Company water stocks. Item 3 is resolution 2024-30, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving the subscription to the Municipal Energy Agency of Nebraska's Modernized Service Schedule M Total Power Requirements Contract. Item 4 is resolution 2024-31, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving the First Amendment to the Professional Services Agreement with Capital Asset and Pavement Services Incorporated for the Pavement Conditions Assessment Plan Project. Item 5 is resolution 2024-32, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement for alternative transportation services between the town of Lyons and Boulder County. Item 6 are the February 16th, 2024 Special Board of Trustees meeting minutes. Item 7 are the March 4th, 2024 regular Board of Trustees meeting minutes. And item 8 are the March accounts payable.
Thank you very much. Is there anything any trustee would like to pull from consent this evening? Okay. Is there a motion?
Sure, I motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion?
And that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to boards and commissions. It is my great pleasure, and I see her online, to appoint Eve Knopf to the Housing and Human Services Commission. So thank you. Yay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, and next we have a wayfinding update from the EBC. Who from the EBC is?
Sure.
Is Kristen there?
She's here.
Oh,
Yep.
I didn't see you, Kristen. Oh, there you are.
Texted her and there she is. And I just, wanted her to give a presentation so you can look at the final designs that we would love to know if you're good with going off to fabrication. Kristen will take it from here. She did present it to the EDC at our last meeting. And then we just talked briefly about allowing you all to ask questions as she goes along. So we could do that.
Are you're prepared for that, Kristen? Yeah, okay. Great. Take it away.
Hi, thank you. Thank you. And I apologize for the chaos in the background. I didn't realize you'd see it. So now I'm a little embarrassed. There's like clothes to go to the homeless place just lying in a pile. So, hi. What I'd like to do is get your comments and feedback on where we are in regard to the signage designs. They have gone to the EDC and we have edited them as per their comments. So we need to hear from you guys too, and I'm anxious to hear from you. We're pretty excited about the designs, but before we go to the final, we'd just like some feedback and direction or any concerns that you have too about the designs. So I think that they were part of your packet, but if you don't mind, I will just share my screen and show
Please
you really
do.
quickly where we are.
Great.
Thank you. So this was part of the packet. This is a snippet out of the summary booklet that we've prepared for the signage. So these show the materials and the color schemes. And I'll just go through this quickly and then I'll just get your comments. This is the larger gateway. We have two versions of this because in order to place it within CDOT right-of-way, we needed a smaller option as well. So just in case, we've got the larger option that we've been showing for a while. There aren't really changes to that. And then the smaller is just a little bit more discreet footprint-wise, so that we can fit it in a smaller footprint in town. And then we also have, go ahead.
Sorry, Kristen, could you go back a slide? Because I feel like I have permission to interrupt, but tell me if that's not true.
Yeah, you do, please.
Okay. About how, it's hard to see from here, about how tall is the top of the L?
Do you see the people in it? Do you see the shadows?
I do see the people, but I don't know how tall they are.
Oh, no, that's okay. Well, in this universe of signage design, everyone's 6 feet tall. So that's roughly 6.5 feet to the very top of the L.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm trying to read the room. Just shout out if you have a question, please. So that's the gateway that we've always proposed for the east side of town, but of course we have gateways into town on the west side as well. So we have a couple different options for what those look like. The one on the left with the stone, the sandstone, is the more robust. But when we met with the EVC, they also said, it might be nice to have some options that are a little leaner, a little more inexpensive. And so that's what you're seeing the two on the right represent. Sort of the higgledy-piggledy version that we really liked with the do-do-do. But then, also reason dictated we should probably try one where they're all lined up in a straight line too. So that's the one on the far right. So again, these are gateways announcing arrival into Lyons from the major thoroughfares that pass through town.
And so where would these be located? There's, you can't see Kristen, but there's a bunch of people in the audience who might be seeing this for the first time.
Oh,
and
fabulous.
some people online. Yeah, maybe, since we have it in our packet, maybe you could tilt the screen that way a little bit.
I'll let you know. Trustee Williams.
Okay, and I see Trustee Williams raised her hand. So my question is,
No, I'll let you know if you.
oh, you'll let me know if she does. Okay. So where might these be located?
This would be it.
So they are at the far northern and southern ends of town along the highway that is on the west side of the community. So these are leading into town. They're not really meant to be in the thick of it in the town itself. So the northern one's roughly across from the event facility, heading up towards Estes. And the southern one is in the area after the bridge where it's a little bit more green.
State Highway 7.
Yeah,
thank you.
It's 7 and 36.
Thank you.
So it's not changing our name, Welcome to Lyons. It's
Okay.
with gateways coming in.
This is just letting others
Supplementing.
know those two.
Yeah. Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Thank you. And then these are our auto-directional options. So the one on the left is the one that's very similar to, if you've seen any of these designs before, this one's kind of gotten tweaked a little bit, but mostly refined so that we could get to a place where everyone's comfortable with it. And again, we just wanted to show a more inexpensive option, which could be an additional option too. So, you know, coming into town, these are going to be at higher speeds, and we may not want to put the cost into those directional signs until you really get into the downtown proper. Their traffic speeds are a little slower, and you can appreciate the details that we would see in the option on the left more.
So question about these. So they're painted aluminum. How long does the paint typically last on these? Like how often will they need to be touched up?
That's a really good question. So we have been working with paint colors, and I have your paint colors here too, the samples. But the more I spoke with people, fabricators, I think we're going to go with paint and or powder coat. And I think that my gut says powder coat is going to be the best option for you all, just from a longevity standpoint, but also from a local manufacturer's standpoint. If we have local manufacturers make these signs, they are more comfortable with having things sent out to powder coat that then they could put together. So they would do some of this perforation and all the metal work. It would still be aluminum, but we would have them send them out to powder coat, and they do that as individual parts. So anything that looks brown would have to be separated from anything that's a different color. And then, you know, it's layering it back together on their end once they come back from the powder coat facility. There's only about 5 powder coat facilities along the front range words. So yeah, that's the recommendation we're leaning toward, but I've kept the original paint just because the colors are easy to reference. So, and yeah, I should drop these to Kim, but we've got some nice actual samples of these colors, both in matte and satin. So we can have you guys take a look and decide.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And again, these are the PED signs that we've been working with throughout. Just a few minor tweaks here. These should, by all accounts, look really similar to what you've seen in the past. And the only question we really have here is whether there is a desire to have stacked sandstone as part of this design. So there are only a few places where we can fit it, but just wanted to get a sense of that as an element.
I think it would depend on the cost.
Yeah,
you know,
well,
we know sandstone isn't cheap.
Yes, it isn't. However, it is a little bit cheaper for you guys because
we know people. Yeah, we know
yeah, you
people.
do, and it's a local.
Yeah.
So yeah. Any questions or comments about these? This is how it looks from the front and each side.
How do folks feel about the stacked stand? That is hard to say. Stacked sandstone.
To be honest, if we were concerned about cost and we were questioning the use of sandstone, I actually really liked it in the gateway sign. So if we had to prioritize that secondary gateway, I really like the use of it with the vertical use of lions. With the sandstone background, I feel like it really pops, like lions just stands out better.
I agree.
So if the cost was an issue, and I mean, I would go to every single quarry in town and see if we could get it donated first. Because obviously we want to have sandstone wherever it's been designed here. But if we had to choose, I would definitely go with the gateway. So that lions actually pops out.
Other thoughts?
I'm in agreement on that.
Okay, great.
Same here.
Perfect. Good. You good?
I agree as well. Yep.
All righty. Okay, please continue.
Thank you for helping me read the room. So we've got 2 types of destination signs. One is the standard that we have for locations that either don't have a sign or, you know, may have a sign, but it's not in the right location and it's made of sandstone, right? So it's very far back. It's difficult for folks to find it if they're navigating to things like Bone Park. So that's what you see in the big image. But we also have a number of existing sandstone signs that are beautiful. They're indicative of town. You know, we don't want to replace those. So we've been working with this idea of a series of multiple columns that look like the rest of the designs, but indicate, you know, the missing information on some of these signs, things like what amenities are there. Sometimes the address is really nice to have. I've just put the icon amenities to show how that would look. But again, these are flexible both in number and message, and they would just be an additive. In this case, it sort of wraps around the existing Laverne M. Johnson Park sign. And that would be the case for like Town Hall, et cetera, just to kind of bring those things into the family.
Kristen, if I may say so, I think that's a very clever idea. I like that a lot. I didn't notice that in the last design phase, but I love this idea.
We've always had cost in mind for you guys, so it's like, oh, we can't redo something that's already lovely and would be expensive. Yeah.
Any other thoughts? I agree. I think it's a very elegant solution. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Well, yes, thank you guys for being so good about providing feedback so we can be here. The merchant and the parking signs are just to call attention to public parking once we're in the downtown area. Most of the public parking will initially be called out on the auto directional signs, but parking is something that is a barrier for people who think they can't stop in Lyons. Where do I park, etc. So these are meant to really illuminate where parking exists and if it's paid or free. It's mostly paid. And then something that I just wanted to throw out as a response to wanting to advertise businesses are these merchant signs. So they are a fairly low profile. Again, in the world of 6 foot people, these sit at about 5, just barely 5 feet. And they advertise different businesses in town or amenities. And you can either buy this blade as the town of Lyons, but you can also, if a merchant would want to be advertised on the sign that's affiliated with their business, they could pay for these blades and they're very inexpensive. They're just direct printed on aluminum. These would be painted because it's not economical to powder coat them when the idea would be that they could easily be changed in and out. If you have more demand, then you have space. We can also do a lottery. If you want more details on this program, there's a similar thing that I designed in Littleton that went up in 2014 and it's been pretty successful. The merchant community especially liked it. So I just felt like this was something that I heard during the outreach, both online and in person. And I felt you should at least have something that looks like merchant signs in your back pocket.
Thank you. I think this is great. I think this is a great way to support our businesses. And from what I remember from when I was the EBC liaison, something that they've been asking for. So I think it's a great opportunity. Thank you.
You're welcome. On the backside, there is the opportunity for a directory that's larger. So you wouldn't need the businesses all to pay into this necessarily, but it would have a little bit more detail for the other businesses in the downtown. Any other comments on these that you'd like me to hear? Sorry.
Doesn't look like it.
I was a little frazzled by my crazy background, so I just can't look at myself, right?
Actually, I do have a question about the parking. So
Yeah.
these examples here say paid. So did you identify or were you thinking of also including free parking on these signs, or were you only thinking paid?
No, I was thinking free as well, and we've color coded these. There's a color palette as you saw on the first page. I think it would be really valuable to choose a color for paid and choose a color for free. And then we can put that on the auto directional signs so that, you know, leading up to town, for example, Bone Park has parking. It would be nice to have a sign that really says, here you go, like head this direction for this free parking.
And would there be room? I see there's room on these signs for 4 icons. So you could have an icon on here with a bicycle, for example. I don't know if these icons are random or if there's been thought around the icons that have been chosen.
There is, especially for Sandstone, because there's a car charger, there's information, there's restrooms, and those are things that people are always looking at in conjunction with the parking itself. So we really want to make sure that the most appealing assets in whatever parking lot in town you're choosing to park in are right on this sign, so people can say, oh yeah, I want to park here because I also need to go to the bathroom and charge my car.
Well, I'm just remembering some feedback from the EDC over the last year where we talked about, signage that directs cyclists to that second half parking lot. So I was just wondering, is there a way to add that icon for bicycles for that particular sign? Say go left here, or that way.
Yes, no, that's a really great idea. We have I've been working on a set of icons that we have built into the booklet, and there's been some real creativity thinking about these icons too. So there's also some recommendations that these are very by the book icons, but there's sort of a pleasant funkiness in lions that I think merits an exploration of icons that are a little bit more quirky. And so we've called through and we have a couple examples of what those look like. And, once you get to fabrication, you can decide which ones you think would be, appropriate. But yeah, agreed. There's a whole kit of, I think there's like 35 icons in the package.
Hey,
So.
Terrific. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so the historic signage, this was a really fun one to work on with the community. This is a kinetic sign, so it has 4 sides. One side says lions, the other has the punch that we're using to represent the strata of sandstone that's indicative to the community. And then there's a little explanation around historic themes. Right now we have community growth, railroad expansion, development and commerce, gateway to the west, and recreation and tourism. And then on the final side are images. You have a beautiful photo collection between the museum and the town, and the historic archives for the Denver Public Library has some really nice images from lions too. So this is meant to say this is what you could do, and this would be a discussion with the museum to finalize the content. And these are very grant funded. These are great signs to use grant funding to do. So the expectation here is that we'd look for grants. This would be almost like as soon as you can get a grant, you would build this sign. It's sort of apart from the other priorities. But you can spin it, which is sort of fun. It has a ball bearing mechanism and it's just sort of playful.
Where would this be?
Yeah, where might this go?
I would like I would like the museum to have a say in this, but I kind of like it at your 100% corner at 4th and Main, on the southeast side. But that lot is, in progress. That's where it is on the location plan. But anywhere that's visible for traffic so that they can see it and be intrigued by it. So that could also be part of the new Broadway streetscape piece as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
And trail. So I was really, really, really happy to hear that you have some funding for trails. This is just 2 examples of how you could do trail signage that would align with the signage designs for the rest of the community. My recommendation here is I've located sort of gateways to trails. So trails are one of the ways that people enter into a community at times. So having these kinds of icons that say, hey, you're arriving in Lions right now, and here's how you get to some of the things that you might be interested in. My recommendation would be to, as part of the trail planning work, that you would indicate additional needs for signs, often things like informational kiosks or mile markers. There's a couple different things you can add to a trail signage palette, but you've at least got a start as far as like how they could match up to the downtown signs.
I was just wondering about a golf cart sign, and because we have them in some places where
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we do have that, because that's the thing. First time I drove around Lions with staff was in the golf cart.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
memorable time.
Well, and I'm really a fan of directional signs that have the amount of time it takes to walk somewhere versus a distance. I think it's much more helpful.
Well, it came up too from a safety perspective for when people are tubing, knowing how to get back to Laverne Johnson isn't necessarily intuitive. We've been in the river.
Yeah.
And, you know, every so often we have a problem with a 10 or 12-year-old who's in the wrong place. And so they're following the river, but the river goes to the
splits and they don't know it.
Right.
They don't know where to go. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, please go on.
Thank you. The rest of the signs are regulatory templates that you can use sort of as these need to be replaced. So these are humble signs, but people often use them to navigate, and there's always a lot of them. So coming up with the pattern on these regulatory signs, starting with the street name signs and the details you would need to have those fabricated. These again are very inexpensive. So they are a nice thing that can go up right away if you have extra money and you want to at least start to allude to the new brand for the signs. These are great. They have certain requirements for CDOT to be put on these mastheads. So these bigger designs reflect the major roadway requirements for CDOT. And again, the details for those. And because you do have a lot of parking signs, I thought it would be really nice to just at least pull through the colorways on these signs so they look a little bit more special. I find that if you do, you know, unique colors, they just look a little less shouty for folks. So I've kind of softened the messaging just by using like the dark green and the orange. This reserve parking has to be a blue color for ADA, but just doing a sort of updated icon, a little softer and a little bit more welcoming. So pretty humble, but there you go.
Okay, well, this is great. Thank you so much, Kristen. For those of you for getting a first glance at this, we've been working on this for how long, Kim?
Oh, the public outreach, I think, started in this summer. We received a grant from the tourism office for a lot of it. And Kristen probably has the numbers, maybe more off the top of her head, but the engagement, there were 3 or 4 days at the library, at the Chamber Social, and at Moxie. And then another round at the library in November, I believe. So maybe it kicked off in late August.
Yes, and over 150 people collectively took the online surveys too, which Kim and I were really happy with those numbers. It's hard to get. Those are great numbers for a small town.
Well, we care a lot about a lot of things, so that's great. So, and would staff be able to give us an update on funding for fabrication? And because I think the last time we talked about maybe doing some temporary signage until funding was settled. So could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So once we have the final design, and Kristen, feel free to jump in if I'm wrong, and Paul, Trustee Williams.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Trustee Williams.
It would be helpful if she stopped sharing her screen.
Oh, thank you. Yes, Kristen, would you mind unsharing your screen? That's much better. Thank you.
Thanks. So once we have the designs, then we need to prioritize the signs based on the cost of each of them. And Kristen I gave her contacts of 2 local fabricators based in Lyons, and she reached out to both, and it sounds like both have the ability. And we would love to be able to work with local fabricators if we can. And then we'll have to come up with a priority plan. So funding wise, we have some of the remaining budget from 2023, since the grant paid for a big portion of it. We also have some Boulder County Economic Vitality funding from their grant. They were hoping to pay for some of the fabrication. And then we plan to apply for the Colorado Department of Transportation Revitalizing Main Street funding, which pays for installation, Still trying to get some clarification if they pay for fabrication. I don't think so, but they would pay for installation on their, what they call on-road systems, which would be on US 36, say Highway 7 and 66. But they'd also pay for it on the off-road system, so along Fourth Avenue, High Street, those type of things, railroad.
Oh, great.
So probably the next step, since we have final design, is then cost package and probably then a priority of what we can afford and phasing it out. And Kristen's always been pretty aware that this was, you know, we don't talk in hundreds of $1,000 numbers, so.
No. No. Okay, great. So are you looking for final approval from us tonight?
That would be really helpful. Something that just really made you say, no. So, and just, so you all know, you know, PRC, LEHC, EBC has all vetted them. I think, didn't you present also to SFC maybe?
I did, but you know, not after we did the final. EVC was the last presentation we had with Lions Group, and they recommended the final tweaks. So, you know, I would need to circle back. There haven't been a lot of tweaks, but yes, I would need to circle back with them to show them where we landed.
Well, let's do that, and then we'll bring it. We'll take it up one more time. But you know, and I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I feel like it makes sense to go ahead and look at the pricing packages and do that based on what we know today.
Okay. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Kristen?
Yeah, no, that sounds great. That's what I would want to do too.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem?
I would like to see, though, on the community gateway signage, the columns, a breakout of both, the one with the stone and the one without.
Yeah,
please.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yes. Pretty much everything. So I will just have them cost everything we've seen tonight.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Thanks,
Thank you
guys.
so much.
Thank you.
Really good.
Okay.
So now for the main event that y'all have been so patiently waiting for. General business item 1 is discussion direction to staff on land use IGA with Boulder County. So to me tonight, we have a couple of questions, and this is no surprise to anybody because we've been talking about it for the last, little bit here. But the first question is, do we want to slow the IGA process down at this point? And the second question I would like to answer is, do we want to form a task force? And Attorney Dittman will give us, I'm sure, some advice about what that means from a legal perspective for a government body. So let's take the first question first. So yes, I do think we need to slow this down. I think the next board should take it over the finish line. You agree, Trustee Dottie? Yes. Yeah. Trustee Williams? Yeah, could you slide the
I'm sorry.
keypad?
Yes, I agree.
Thank you. Great. Thank you. You were facing away from us for a second there. So, okay. All right. So that's the direction to staff, is to slow this down, and we'll talk about timeline. I think it is important to be thorough and fast at the same time. I think I would encourage the next board to be as thorough as possible and to hopefully get it complete well before November. Yeah. Which is the extension deadline. Yeah. And then, so the next question is about the task force. And Brendan, could you describe for us, in terms of our code, what a task force is?
Yeah, so a task force is a temporary, group of no more than 2 trustees plus additional members. Traditionally in Lions, we've assembled those via resolution. When we have assembled, a task force of this kind of official imprimatur, there's also, as opposed, there could be a study group, it gets smaller, more temporary type of body. But for this, I think we'd recommend a resolution establishing the purpose, duration, and membership of that body.
Okay, great. And so when it comes to the composition of this task force, no more than 2 trustees, I think it makes sense to obviously wait until the next board is seated to choose those trustees because we don't know who is going to be here. And Mayor Pro Tem, you had some ideas, I think, that you wanted to discuss.
Yeah, I did. But I actually have a quick question. So on a task force, those are still considered public meetings. Is that correct? So it's posted and anybody can join.
So if there's no more than 2 trustees, then it's not a public meeting with no requirement for noticing or publication in advance of their meetings. It still may be a good idea to do that, right? Kind of given the high profile of these issues, but there's no legal requirement if there's only 2 trustees.
Okay. So my recommendation, I think, would be going forward is that should happen, in my opinion, on something like this, but there still might be the necessary need for governance in terms of how the meeting is run and participation from the public, timing, etc. Because we want to say meetings to stay productive and moving forward and efficient. So that would be one of my recommendations. I was thinking it just should be an odd number. I was going to recommend 1 homeowner, 1 renter, and 1 local business from the community. I was going to recommend that if anyone in the community that is, interested in being a part of that task force, submit some kind of written statement, why you want to participate in this. I was going to recommend a deadline for March the 25th. Do you want me to just go through all of them and then we address them, or one at a time?
Let's go one at a time.
Quite a few.
Yeah. Well, and so leaving out the composite, like the qualities of the people aside for a second. March 25th is just after folks are getting back from spring break. So I think we might consider extending that a little bit.
My only thought was that and that's fine, that it would be a good idea that it's included in the packet for the 1st. So I just want to make sure that staff had time to collect and review, because one of my other criteria I thought is I would recommend that it is a resident within town limits versus, the planning area, that it is limited to town limits. So that was the reason for my timing on that. So it's flexible, obviously, but I wanted to respect staff's time too.
So I just want to respond to that, because at first we were talking about waiting until the next Board of Trustees is seated. Is that April 18th? 15th, April 15th. And so I'm just curious why we wouldn't have the same deadline for all of the task force members. If we're going to wait until April 15th when the new Board of Trustees has been seated to choose 2 trustees, why wouldn't we wait to choose the other members of the task force at the same time?
I think we could. I think getting the process going though is probably a good idea for the timing issues that Mayor Pro Tem said. And also, if we could, what we could do is collect applications, make recommendations to the board that's seated on the 15th that they can either take or not. But at least we'll have moved the ball a little bit further down by collecting applications.
I'm thinking of efficiency of time, because we do know how quickly time goes by. So anything that we can do to be assistance is my thought.
Right.
What about thoughts on the composition that Mayor Pro Tem suggested, which is 1 homeowner, 1 renter, and 1 business owner? We also, I think, need to somehow triangulate, and I really like that mix of residents, because we're all members of the same community. And also I want to make sure that we have the geographic disparity that we want. So any suggestions about that? Trustee Williams, please.
Yeah, I want to go back just a bit. To me, I believe slowing it down is slowing it down. And so I don't think a deadline that is right after spring break is a good idea. I think the 15th to me makes sense. Open the process earlier, but wait until the 15th to finish it. I also agree, a smaller group, 5 or 7 is probably appropriate. And I like the idea of business owner, homeowner, and renter. I do think the different parts of town need to be represented with each of those.
And I would also like to say that I think that it's important to include staff, both staff from the town of Lyons and staff from the county, to be a part of the conversation and answer questions that we often can't answer.
Yeah, that's an assumption, I suppose, for me.
I would also recommend that anybody that does want to apply for this, though, really state clearly their position so that we can make sure that we are robust with getting a cohesive amount of thoughts in the process. And, you know, so that the discussion will lead to genuine representation. And compromise is going to be key. It's at some point, we're going to have to make some amount of compromise. And so I think that the more diverse representation of people in town, the better off that we will be for people to ultimately be comfortable with something, even if they're not entirely comfortable with it.
I think that's a great point, and I think too, I want to make clear that the way that I envision this process personally is not that the task force will make the decisions about the IGA. The way I see it is the task force will make recommendations to the board, will have more public engagement about those recommendations, and we'll move the process on from there. We're getting a thumbs up from Trustee Williams that you all can't see.
Yeah. So it sounds like a commission to me, but a temporary commission. With a
The task force?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Then we would function very much like a commission that advises. the
Yeah.
Board of trustees.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'm super impressed with Paul Dreyer. He did such a fantastic job at the candidates forum. I have seen him moderate various meetings where there's lots of different discussions. So I would recommend he be asked to help moderate this kind of a meeting for, you know, not that I've asked him in any way, shape, or form, and he might not want to be volunteered, but I think he's super impressive and really good at getting everybody to participate. And so I just want to put that out there too.
So go ahead, Brandon. I was just going to ask you a question, but maybe you're going to answer it before I ask it.
Okay, I actually want to make a correction to my earlier statement about the posting. I think since it it would through a resolution be an official, you know, body of the town of Lyons, that would attach the requirement for, you know, the meeting certainly being open to the public, but probably also posting in advance of its meetings. Certainly the open to the public piece, though. I just want to correct that for the record. I think, you know, if it was just 2 trustees and they met random people, then the answer would be different, which is kind of what I was thinking at first. But since it is an official body, I think 1, it just makes good sense to do that. And 2, I think it would be legally required.
Thank you. The question I had, Brandon, is can we gear up the resolution to create the task force without yet knowing who's going to be on it?
Yeah, I think that's usually how this works. And in fact, I mean, we just say, you know, what the task force is, what its objective is, what its membership should be comprised of. And then usually for these temporary ones, we put some sort of sunset on it, you know, so it doesn't exist forever. And so we could do all that without knowing who the members are.
Okay. Okay, are we in agreement that, staff should start gearing that up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you prefer, a simple application similar, to what we do for our boards and commissions, or do you want it just to be a written statement?
I personally would prefer a simple application.
Okay.
And maybe, and I'm just kind of spitballing what we might ask besides, name and stuff like that. Is do you own, do you rent, do you own a business in town? And then, with the address, we'll have geographic, if people have to give the address, we'll see where they live geographically. And then any statement about why they would like to serve on the task force. And then you were talking a little bit earlier about a selection process that was used when Julie Waugh stepped off the board. Do you want to talk about that, or you don't have to?
I thought about it only if we were going to have this be something that we would want to have established before the 15th, but maybe that's up for the other board. One of my thoughts was that could be considered is that an anonymous type selection amongst the board, so that that can feel really uncomfortable showing any sense of public pressure if we're doing it that's not an anonymous way. So in other words, I was using the example in the past where we had a trustee that resigned, and we had 2 or 3 people that stepped up, and then it ended up coming down to a tie, but it was all anonymous, and ultimately ended up in a coin toss. But I felt like that was a really positive process without making anybody feel uncomfortable or pressured or influencing, etc. So just a recommendation.
Well, we'll keep that recommendation for the folks who are actually doing the selection. So appreciate that. Are there any other thoughts on the criteria you use to accept applications, knowing that the next board could maybe ask more questions if they wish, or, change everything, honestly, if they wish, but just to get this process going? Any other thoughts on that?
Well, I guess my question would be around outreach and how do we advertise this to the community? How do we communicate this? Is it going through an e-blast? Is it going on the Town of Lyons Facebook page? Is it going?
I think it goes everywhere, and I think our friends at the newly formed group will be happy to share the news. So yeah, I think in the normal ways, unless do you think that there's something that we're missing?
No, I hadn't thought about their ways of disseminating information. Yeah, I'm sure I'll get out there.
No, I think it's good. It's a good start.
Trustee Williams, do you have anything else to add? Oh, you're muted, but I think you said that.
I do not have anything else to add.
Okay. All right. Administrator Simonson, do you feel like you have enough direction?
I think so. Staff will draft a resolution including the items that Attorney Dittman explained. So purpose, length of time, membership, those sorts of things. And we'll gear up an application for you to review. Bring that to your next meeting.
Okay.
For approval for those 2 items. A process, an application, and a resolution.
And I guess I would maybe, I don't know if it should have some element of a statement to the objective of it, being very clear.
There will be an objective in the resolution.
Okay.
Yeah.
As part of being a task force is we have to identify why they're forming and what the goal is out of it.
Great, thank you.
And it will be to recommend amendments to the IGA.
Yeah.
Attorney Dittman?
Dittman?
Yeah, I had a question on the length. I was thinking maybe 6 months or until dissolved by the Board of Trustees, but I was kind of looking for direction on that one.
That would be good.
I would like to, to allow for enough public process. Maybe 5 months because I think we.
Well, it needs to get back to the board and you're gonna have to have your formal public input.
And yeah, it needs to get back to the board. We have to have our formal input. I don't know whether Boulder County is going to be doing their own public input. I see Planner Hibley's on here. And so we don't know what their process is. So I think we might need to triangulate with the county and make sure that our processes the gears are meshing,
I'll talk with Hannah about that.
Okay. Okay, so we good on that then? All right, great, okay. All right, so then let's move on to discussion direction on our finance workshop and additional budget requests. So we had a workshop earlier. Oh, come on, you guys. Come on, Mark, we're talking about budget, jeez. Clears the room, clears the room, actually. Do we,
Don't take it personal. I get that all the time.
Do we want to take a short break since it's almost 9, or do we want to power through?
I could actually use a minute.
You could, okay, we'll take a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
Let's get
Oh,
moving.
it's tired.
Okay, thank you, everybody, for taking that break. Next on the agenda is discussion direction on finance workshop and additional budget requests. So we had a workshop prior to the meeting. Director Eystone, could you just give a super brief update for folks who weren't able to be there?
Absolutely. We went over the current purchasing policy and discussed phasing in revisions to that policy. The first revision being the consolidating the purchasing limits and authority and processes, which will be brought forward at the next board meeting. The other piece was going over some 2024 budget items that were originally in the capital budget, but had to be pushed out due to lack of projected funding. And now we have 2023 rollover funding, and we're looking at replacing, requesting to replace a couple of vehicles that are completely dead or cost more to replace than they are worth, in addition to adding additional funding to the security cameras and the hardware upgrades to fully fund that project in lieu of phasing that one in.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And so the board had a number of questions. One of the questions that I had is there any way to use these funds to help alleviate the strain that folks are feeling from both commercial and residential property taxes? The answer to that was legally no. We can't distribute money to individuals, but staff is going to try to take a look at ways that we can help alleviate that somehow. So that'll be coming back hopefully soon. And so what we're talking about is, so the staff recommendations are for 2 vehicles. And we also discussed during the workshop whether we should take a look at purchasing used vehicles, purchasing or leasing electric vehicles. And so I think my feeling is, yes, those vehicles should clearly be replaced. And I would love to see some analysis of what the cost would be for those variables.
Yeah.
You guys agree?
Yeah. And the best option over years, so.
Yeah, the best investment over years, yeah. Agree with that. Trustee Williams? Yeah, okay, she said yes. And then I'm all for extra security in the parks.
Mine too.
Are you? Yeah. Okay. Great.
Yeah, hopefully the extra security can stop vandalism.
That's what we're hoping. Yeah. And yeah, I won't ask where the cameras will go because I don't think we want to publicize that, but I think we can all agree that's a good investment. How much did we spend on graffiti removal last summer?
Oh, gosh, not including the internal time. I would have to take a look at that, but I bet we've increased the budget year after year. It's probably close to 10,000 maybe, or so. And that's not including just the internal, that we have a separate line item when we have to go out and hire it out for extensive removal. But I would have to look up the exact amount for sure.
Okay. And did we talk to the Boulder County Sheriff about the possibility of us adding more cameras? I assume they're okay with that.
I believe this is in conjunction with them. The
Okay.
sheriff was helping recommend placement and.
Oh, good. Okay. So if we do those things, then what are we talking about with the remaining funds?
Great question. So if we do the security cameras, which it sounds like that one is a direction you'd like to head with the additional 30,000, it'll be split between the general and parks fund. So that would leave about 160 in the Parks and Rec Fund. And then it depends on the replacement costs. If we went with a brand new vehicle, for example, with the truck and the plow, that would be about 70,000, so 30 5-ish, split between, so that would still leave about 300,000 in the, general fund, and then about 100,000, or a little over 100,000 in the Parks and Rec fund.
Okay.
In addition to the budgeted fund balance. So these numbers don't include the budgeted fund balance. This is just the rollover piece.
Okay.
And then the utilities, it looks like the electric fund it does only have $4,000 in rollover fund, but it does have a healthier fund balance that could cover a portion of that. And then same with the water and sewer fund as well. That 85,000 does not take into account the 1.8 million from the settlement. This is above and beyond that. So it kind of depends on if we, what route we go. I do agree that used, it might be, a good option to pursue in addition to, your electric and things like that. So we can definitely explore those options. Perhaps if you want to give either direction on explore them first before we approve dollar amounts, or approve not to exceed dollar amounts, but we want you to explore X, Y, and Z first before you move forward with an actual purchase. All of these items would come forward in a budget amendment at a later date. So I think it depends on the direction. It sounds like you wanted to move forward with the security cameras, but additional research on the vehicles.
And I think, you're right, and I think not to exceed makes a lot of sense. What do other folks think about that with the vehicles?
Yeah, so I would say, I would agree with a not to exceed, because it gives staff an amount to work with to see what, and then if there's a better option, but it costs more, it's we gotta be able to approve it anyway, but it comes back for more discussion.
Trustee Williams?
Yes, not to exceed.
Okay.
I agree.
Mayor Protest?
I wouldn't know what to cap the number at, because I've not been shopping for a vehicle anytime recent.
And it's the plow piece that I don't know offhand what they need. They need a larger plow or a smaller plow for tighter areas. He knows, but
He does know. I don't have those details.
Okay.
I mean, I'm comfortable with just, staff's discretion.
we'll have to get quotes either way. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, I don't know about the rest of the board, but I would really love to see these be EVs if possible. And so, I would be willing to allocate a little bit more money if they're EVs.
Yep, they will cost more. There's no doubt in my mind they will cost more.
I'm very confident Edward Keene is gonna find a way.
I would love for Edward to research this.
Edward, find a way.
You know he is.
Okay, and so, are there other ideas about what we would like to do with the remaining 300,000 in the general fund? How much of it we would like to continue to hold on to? What other ideas we have about what we might use it for? Because I have some, but I'm gonna hold my tongue for a minute.
Yeah, so there was the list of,
Yeah, I see two.
yeah,
I see two that jump out at me. And they both, so one of them is sidewalk funding and the other one is streets capital. I mean, those are the two that jump out. As much as wayfinding is super fun and exciting, I still feel like it's more cosmetic and less of a priority than sidewalks and streets. That's infrastructure. And I really want to support the wayfinding, and I would love to find, once we know more about cost, hopefully we can start somewhere with that. But out of those four things, I just see sidewalks and streets, I'm just drawn to those.
And can you remind us, please, what we spent from the streets fund in 2023? When we did the
major capital improvements.
well, we grand total with all the operating and other, there was more than that.
So we did to pay.
Yeah, it all went to the one fund though. So we have 230 something left maybe, or 250 something left in that we carried over. But let me just check it.
Because if we, my thinking is if we can pay the streets fund back, that would be ideal, or at least partially.
Yeah, I think, we definitely have 200 and I feel like it's 35 left. And then we're gonna add 150 to that with the 2024 budget.
I think you're wanting to know how much did it cost for the improvements
Yeah,
we
let me-
did?
In 2023.
Was it, I mean,
And, you know, an estimate's fine.
I don't think so. $720.
and we have 250, 236 plus 150?
It's something like that, yeah.
236 plus 150.
So we'll be,
Of what we carried over and what we budgeted for 24 already.
close to 400,000 probably.
Well, I mean, I appreciate what I love the wayfinding too. I love it so much.
I still want to be there.
We will get there.
Cannot wait to do wayfinding. Oh my gosh.
We will get there. And I've seen,
in the budget to get us started.
Let's get started. Let's do a gateway fine at least. Get the fans going donated, right?
Yes, you will.
so I'm just gonna make a proposal and folks tell me what you think. I think we should split the 300 half into sidewalks and half into streets.
Yeah.
But I want to know what staff thinks of that too.
Yeah.
But let's see okay, trustee Williams is giving the thumbs up.
Sounds good to me.
Mayor Pro Tem's not so sure. And that's great.
I actually do. I think that it's important to put some money into the general fund for the rainy day projects that come up, expenses that we aren't expecting. So I'm all for streets and sidewalks, but I think some money needs to stay in the general fund too. And I don't know what exactly that percentage is, but I think it would be wise. Do you have any suggestions?
So my intent of bringing this forward was not to say, here's the amount, right, that, and we should and could spend all of it. My intent really was to show, here's our kind of immediate needs that did get pushed off. I tend to agree that some should stay in the general fund for those things that do come up when we underestimate a construction cost or things like that. It is really nice to be able to have that. Or a grant comes and we need matching funds or, because if you remember when we did the budget, and I have to go back and look, we came pretty close on our available fund balances. So this is, what is available, for that. So, I would be a little hesitant to say, yes, we don't have immediate needs other than the ones maybe that are here. But let's allocate all of it. I would be hesitant to probably suggest that we do that. However, it is completely up to the board how you would like to move forward.
Can you give us a dollar amount that you would feel really comfortable with keeping in the general fund? I'm putting you on the spot, I know.
I think 100,000 at least, probably.
I agree. That's my recommendation.
So maybe we should double it.
So if we still have 300,000 in the general fund remaining, you would add another 100 to get to 400,000. Is that what you're saying? You feel comfortable?
No, of that 300 at the very least. let's
I
say-
see.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
let's keep back
Sure.
100,000.
Into the
Okay.
general, so now you're working with 200.
I thought you were throwing an extra 100 in there. I'm like,
No.
where does that go? Okay.
So, if I could ask a question, it might seem pretty rudimentary. If a board wanted to at some point transfer money from the general fund to the streets, it would be just a simple budget amendment.
Absolutely. Yes. So, yes, well, No, they're their own fund, but yes, that's exactly what could happen. And it could happen at any time. It could happen as part of the 2025 budget. It could, anytime through the year, we can amend the budget for whatever we want to amend it for. On the flip side, it could get, which I'm not suggesting this, it could get transferred back, anything, any transfer can happen at any time.
So I have a little different perspective. So I would like to see us get a truck and 2 cars, do security cameras, and keep the rest surplus
In the general
in the
fund.
general fund, yeah.
A
Well,
truck.
just wherever it is. A truck is, replace both cars, because we have 2 Ford Escapes that both don't run well. At all. We've been in both of them. So I feel like we should replace both. I feel like,
Well, they certainly need to be clean.
yes.
Right, there's no
So
question
I feel like
about
we should replace both of them, get a truck, something that'll last us for years and years. And save the rest. But that's me. That's a lot of savings. And that's me.
that. Do you feel like both cars need to be replaced?
We do have, the 2 Escapes. One is definitely worse than the other. The other is going to go anytime. I mean, we're just making it, we don't let anyone take them out of town, either one of them. So that if something happens, it's here in town and we can go pick them up. So they are both gonna need it at some point. It's just one hit that point already. So, we do have, one of our employees who uses his personal vehicle for all town business. And
That's not good.
I don't like doing that at
No.
all.
And that's why I'm
But
suggesting.
we don't
Yeah.
have to go
Yeah.
around not with code compliance. If we didn't, code compliance and Aaron and the project manager and the engineer, they, they share 2 vehicles, which works mostly, but the other one's gonna, if not this year, it'll be next year.
And so, when we're looking at replacing an Explorer or 2 Explorers, would it be this Escape, sorry, would it be a similar kind of vehicle? So like an SUV?
Oh, it can be, I think, there's no reason, I mean, code compliance could drive a smaller EV in town. I mean, that'd be great.
So, yes, I was going to say, when I was recently at the Nissan dealership for our latest Leaf, you can actually get last year's model for $79 a month as a lease. $79 a month. You're probably paying more in gas for your gas-powered town vehicles.
Yeah, they just need something big enough if there's a street sign that needs to go in the trunk, they find
Yeah.
something like that, or an animal that needs picked up or whatever.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be anything significant for code compliance. Like I said, I think Aaron, knowing he goes out in all conditions, should have
Yeah.
something a little hardier.
Oh, for sure.
Aaron and our engineering project manager.
Well, I mean, all employees should have a safe vehicle to do their work in. Yeah. Okay, what does the rest of the board think of Trustee Ellison's idea?
He is leaning me over towards his direction rather than the other one.
Trustee Williams, what are your thoughts?
You're muted.
Oh,
I probably would be leaning toward 100 general and then 100 split the other 2.
I'm fine with 100
Because I was originally saying 150, 150. Now I'm saying 100 for each of those 3 areas.
I'm with her.
Well, I was ready to go 100, 100, 100, but now I hear this plea for EV vehicles and getting ahead of the curve before they die on us, because we don't know when they're gonna die. I mean.
Well, I thought that did include the trucks still.
Well, there was at least a truck and 2 vehicles,
Yes,
right?
I said a truck and 2 vehicles.
Yeah.
And then we still have 300 left over, so we're 100, 100, and 100.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so we still have the 300 after the truck and the 2
No.
vehicles?
Well,
Depends what they cost.
if we leased a Leaf for $79 a month, that doesn't even take board action. I could
Yeah.
do $79 a month, but.
I know, I feel like the code compliance officer could get around with some winter tires and a Leaf.
Maybe so. I would maybe suggest, knowing that the price of streets is so much more than the price of sidewalks, that you might consider 125 to reserve, 75 to sidewalks, and 100 to streets.
And not do the 2 car replacements
No, do those, but with that remaining.
with the remaining.
Can you repeat that one more time, please?
125 to reserve,
To general
Still have
fund.
the cars, 125 general.
100 to streets, and 75 to sidewalks. Because we already have 170 set aside for sidewalks, so if we did, 70, we'd be close to 250, which is a nice project.
That's a nice yeah, we could actually do more than a block.
So, yeah, I don't think we have that much. So then that would only leave 50 in the general fund for all of,
If we do the pickup and the cameras.
yeah, and another
Yeah,
vehicle.
because we only have 3.
Well, if we only did one vehicle, then the one vehicle would be split between utilities. If we did 2 vehicles outside of the truck, then that vehicle would likely be a general fund.
Okay, so let's do this. Do we want to do the truck in 2 vehicles?
Yeah. I would say
Or
yes.
truck in one vehicle.
Truck in one vehicle, and we can figure out the other one.
What, tell me why.
Like if we could get a very small.
$79 a month.
vehicle
Oh my gosh.
For under 100 a month, that's within my spending range.
And so you would, so at that point, you wouldn't recommend that we acquire 2 vehicles, just 1 vehicle?
Not if we go for a lease option. I think
Yeah.
we should look into it. We can
Yeah,
keep driving
I think so
until it
too.
goes.
Yeah, you keep driving it until it goes anyway.
Yeah, we'll
And then
keep
after
driving.
that,
it
we'll
until
zero.
it goes.
Okay, so that was 100 into the general fund, 125 into streets, and 75 into sidewalks?
I would
Is
I would
that,
say
It was, okay.
how much we got left?
So it was 125 into
Reserves.
reserves or fund balance. You said 100 to streets
75.
and 75,
okay,
but then that leaves, so then
How
that's
much is left?
50,000 to spend between a truck and security cameras.
That's not enough.
No, it isn't enough. It's probably exactly.
Okay.
It's 15, I'm just thinking general fund.
Yeah.
15,000 for the cameras and then 35 for.
well, and if it's not enough, I think you can come back to the board
Yeah.
Sure.
with the request.
Yeah.
Or we can, usually if it's not enough, there's room to absorb it elsewhere. So let's say we need $3,000 more or $4,000 more or something like that. We can typically absorb that anyways.
Through vacancy
Through
savings
vacancy
and other
savings
things.
or professional services
I mean-
savings or.
Not having code compliance for 1 month is right there, a few $1,000s.
Yeah, although we do want code compliance.
No, I know, but just even the couple weeks he's been gone, I mean, it adds up.
Yeah,
That's how we came to this number to rollover. is
yeah,
Part of it, yeah.
All sorts of small items coming together.
yeah, okay. So I think we've hit it then. Then listen,
You can make everybody happy.
oh my gosh. Are you sure? Okay.
You always have ideas.
Okay, great. The next item on the agenda is follow-up from, our executive session, which is the town administrator review, and we're going to put another short executive session at the beginning of the next meeting. All right, trustee reports. I'm gonna go first tonight. I'm gonna be brief. Dr. Cog is Wednesday evening, so I'll be going to that. Anyone who would like to join me, who has a burning desire to see what Dr. Cog meetings are like, you are more than welcome to. It's a little lonely in the ride down there and back, so just let me know. I missed the last LEHC meeting, but I know Director Mitchell was there. I don't know if she has anything to update from the LEHC meeting.
They're moving forward with the Laverne Johnson sculpture. That was the big one. Some finals on that. I don't remember. The creative outlets call has gone
That went
out.
out, yeah.
And moving forward with public sculptures. In fact, we've gotten 2, I think, approved by staff this week, so they should get placed probably by the end of the month.
Oh, that's great. Okay.
One
you.
is by a local artist, John Key.
Oh, exciting. I've never heard of him. That's great.
You'll have to meet him.
Nice guy. Wednesday morning is our Metro Mayor's Caucus Legislative Committee update. And finally, so for PRC, we were talking this morning about potential uses for any excess funding from the St. Vrain Trail project, and started just batting around ideas like maybe picnic bench or a pull-off place for people to stop and rest, and just curious about whether the PRC might have any recommendations for stuff like that.
Amenities.
Along the trail.
Golf cart charging station rates.
Yeah. The pullovers could be used for that too, like if there's bikes coming and a golf cart wants to pull over.
Yeah, passing lanes. Okay, and that's it for me. Trustee Williams, would you like to?
Historic Preservation Committee, scheduled to meet this week. They're gonna have to put that off. Still trying to figure out a date that's gonna work. And I actually don't have anything else.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Dillman?
So the PRC, they need another member, so if anybody knows someone who would like to be on the board. And so the Second Avenue dry camping will be installed by the end of April.
Yes. Exciting. Congratulations. Yay.
The Martin parcel was deemed unsafe for prescribed burn. So the piles are being removed. The burn piles are being removed. And there will be goats in Stone Canyon this year.
Oh, great. Do we know when?
Yeah, I do. It was, I think it's the first few weeks of April.
Oh, good.
They want to get them out there while vegetation is
Green and tender.
I think it's gonna be April.
And is it goat mowers or mighty goats?
I think it's goat mowers this time for that section, and then we're getting a bid on a section behind between McConnell and the L Hill.
Are those I remember from a couple of years ago, there was one company that put the goats in a box overnight, and one company where
It depends on the size they're doing and if they don't want to transport them every day. So, yeah, I'm guessing, I can't remember those numbers offhand, but Stone Canyon was a pretty nice size. And I think they'll be staying overnight.
Have we alerted the Stone Canyon residents that they're getting goats?
I told I asked the HOA actually during budgeting if they'd be interested in having them. And they said yes.
Okay, so we should probably just let them know when.
We'll let them know when it happens, and it will all get snow fenced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Also, one more thing.
Yeah.
So the orchard planting will be March 30th, starting at 9 a.m. There will be food provided by the St. Vrain Market. And it sounds like there's gonna be a lot of kids, a lot of people, and it should be a fun event.
And do you still have trees available for sale?
Yes, I'll be picking up the trees a week from Wednesday, so people need to order them before that. Oh, so people can order trees for their yard as well, but there are still about 15 trees to sponsor at $100 a tree. You get a plaque and you can put name with artwork or whatever on there. And then
tree.
Kids, like Girl Scouts will be coming. We're gonna do a border of flowers, and there's gonna be river rocks along that to kind of show the border, and Girl Scouts will be painting those, and so any other kids that want to do that should be fun.
Oh, that sounds great. Will there be music?
I can sing, but probably drive everybody away.
I'm looking forward to that.
1970s music. Probably.
Yeah. Sounds great fun.
Mayor, I'm gonna read the things.
Okay. Oh, right. Go ahead, Trustee Jackson.
Okay, well, the Housing and Human Services Commission met on March 11th. So I was surprised to learn that Lions Valley Townhomes actually has 5 available units. So 33 of them are occupied of the 40. And, you know, they're receiving applications, they're working through applications, but actually Summit is getting, well, like, they might have already begun marketing more broadly to Longmont and Estes Park and surrounding area for those final 5. So that was surprising, because I thought we were down to 2, but I guess the applications aren't, they withdrew. They withdrew. I see. I'm so thankful we have filled one of the vacancies tonight, so thank you for appointing, is it Lynn? Eve, sorry, Eve, not. Thank you, Eve, for stepping up. We still have 1 vacancy. And then there's some, oh yes, we were talking about that Get Help resource booklet and how to get the news out. So I think the chair, Kay Sparks, is thinking about writing a monthly review in the Redstone Review where she's giving like snippets of information from the Get Help guide. So kind of like focusing on some resources each month. What else? I think Megan was talking about a subcommittee of the PCDC, which is focusing on EDUs, and that came up in the housing committee. She's also talking about LEAF surveying their clients and also the elderly population to find out how they get their information and how we can share the Get Help guide, for example, or other resources with them. What's the best way to do that? I think Lisa might have confirmed that the LEAF would be happy to host the medical closet. So that was really good news, that the medical supplies could go to LEAF's new building. There was some question there around affordable water shares versus attainable water shares. So I think there was discussion around Lake McIntosh shares being reserved for affordable housing. And the question came up, does attainable housing also count?
That's a great question.
I know, I'm like, I would love to know the answer to that. Oh, and I shared the good news about Netherland receiving the $104,000 grant for a feasibility study of a multi-jurisdictional housing authority.
Yeah, and so that would be Lyons, Netherland, and Jamestown and Allen's Park is what we're thinking and what the thought is. So it would be cross county, right? Because
it's Gilpin County.
It's Gilpin County, yeah. But so that's it. That's really in its infancy,
right? It's
like pre-infancy stage.
And that possibly referred to as the peak to peak. Is that what they're referring to it as now?
I think so, yeah.
The peak to peak housing authority. So they were excited to hear about that.
This is a feasibility study to see.
A feasibility study.
Yeah.
Feasibility study.
Thank you for pointing that.
Yeah, for multi-jurisdictional housing to see if
for the mom. Is it even possible?
Right, exactly. And it sounds like that co-responder position is still vacant. Apparently there was a part-time co-responder available when called upon. So I'm not sure where this part-time responder is. I don't know how long it takes to get to Lyons. It sounds like the calls for mental health and suicide are down. So maybe there's less need, but I don't know if I heard the numbers for domestic abuse. I mean, I'm just still always kind of cautious about our need for that co-responder position. And I just wonder where that part-time person is coming from. So I think that's all for now.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Mine will be very short. EDC meets Wednesday, EAB meets tomorrow night. SFC meeting last week I missed. Tim, I haven't seen the minutes yet. Was there anything big from the SFC meeting?
No, we talked about some of the events happening in the spring and then getting people to go electric. And I know it's Scribe was working on the minutes today.
Thank you. All right, we have the time.
PCDC, they were at the meeting on Monday, so there's not much there to update. They were wondering though, what should their role be in the IGA going forward? And on Monday's meeting next week, I think what I'll suggest is hang tight. So, that it's in the process and maybe, and unless you all give other direction, I was thinking of suggesting to them that they consider what they're looking at the comprehensive plan, thinking about planning priorities that they have had on their list that maybe they can then make recommendations to the new board for the next year, and whatever role that they can take on in the IGA, the new board will let them know. Okay, so that's all there. I'm gonna take a minute and, since I'm not going, actually, this makes me wanna choke up a little bit. Since I'm not gonna be a trustee anymore, I do wanna take a trustee moment, to express some thoughts, that I have really pondered a lot, since last Monday's meeting, and the alternatives that were proposed for the draft IGA and some suggestions. And so I'm gonna go ahead and take this opportunity and share my thoughts, and it's just a little bit of a different perspective. So on number one, their suggestion was to keep the current 2012 IGA map in place and execute best options as aligned with the 23 comprehensive plan. And so I believe that the IGA map should be updated to reflect a balance between the 23 comp plan and a 24 IGA that should be adopted this year. A housing IGA subcommittee is going to be appointed, and the maps should reflect its suggested compromises that the board will choose to adopt. So I don't think it's appropriate to keep the 2012. The second one was, before we seek to expand town's reach into unsuitable areas, focus on the development of the Eastern Corridor, for affordable, approachable housing, and only annex areas where new development could result in a net positive economic benefit to the town. So I believe that the Eastern Corridor, and as it's referred to in the comp plan, the East St. Vrain, is a good opportunity for affordable housing. It is vital that we remember that Lyons needs to expand its economic development, and that's a primary area for robust sales tax base. And I'd like to just caution that if the Eastern Corridor is housing only, that we will have a cost, the grammar's wrong in here. I'm sorry, I've got to remember what I was trying to say. It'll be a cost to the town. It could cost the town a real opportunity for economic sustainability. So let's just, I think there needs to be a strong balance between Eastern Corridor housing and making sure that we have a strong sales tax base. Number three, ADUs. They would like to provide more incentives with Boulder County on accessory dwelling units. I like ADUs. It's been something that we have worked on for years, and I'm very proud of them. But it is not a one shoe fits all approach. Diverse housing is inclusive housing. Number four, explore greater cooperation with our close by communities, Longmont, with a public transport pipeline to bridge the town of Lyons with Longmont, where extensive new affordable housing options exists today and more in development. This one, I really have struggled over. I am strongly opposed to this suggestion. It is using public transportation as a failed attempt to segregate the haves and the have-nots. This is intentional residential segregation. It reinforces socioeconomic and racial divides. It disrupts people's daily lives, separates them from their communities, and hampers their ability to fully integrate into our town's social fabric. In the comp plan, there's a public transportation goal. There are goals to manage visitors' access to mitigate the effects of tourism. There are goals to enhance transportation networks to encourage Lyons residents to access Longmont and Boulder. The majority of our residents leave Lyons to go to work outside of town, shop, and seek services that we don't have. I stand for public transportation and I promote that promotes access to work, school, and amenities, not to exclude individuals from residing in our community. Number 5, increase exploration for more mixed-use commercial residents, in downtown, such as Main and 4th. And I'm fine with that one. I do think that it's appropriate that we really honor the 5-acre rule. It's clearly stated in the comprehensive plan that we would not develop above the blue line. But I think that in the spirit of our community moving forward, which it needs to do, we have to compromise and we have to come together. So that's all I have to say about that.
Okay, I'm gonna read a statement from Trustee Edding, who is not with us tonight. He says, Mayor Rogan, trustees, town staff. My apologies for not being able to attend tonight's meeting. Unfortunately, I have a personal obligation that could not be rescheduled. Please include into the record these comments concerning the IGA with Boulder County. Although I made statements in a prior meeting expressing a desire to conclude negotiations with the county, that clearly cannot happen at this time. I do continue to believe that an IGA is beneficial to the town and every effort should be made by the next board to develop a common vision with the county. I fully support Mayor Rogan's desire for the effort to continue with an open working group. Although my term is coming to an end, based on my time serving on the PCDC and BOT, I highly recommend to the working group and board that discussions with the county prioritize the Eastern Corridor where any growth, if desired, is more technically realistic, plausible, and congruent with the town structure. Additionally, concerns regarding herbicide and pesticide use on lands adjacent to the town should be addressed with the IGA, or a different but certain avenue should be taken. Lastly, regarding the landowner's ability to subdivide prior to an annexation request, although the letter of the law and the spirit of the law arguably disagree, that argument is clearly an unreasonable and divisive conundrum to place on a future trustee. I hope these concerns are taken into consideration. Finally, on a personal note, being a public servant has been an honor, a privilege, and a challenge. From my experience, I have learned how land use issues can be deeply personal and complicated. A previous board experienced this with the Summit Housing Project, and this board is experiencing it now. The just desire for landscape and property preservation will certainly be challenged with the need for obtainable housing now and in the future. It is my sincerest wish that the community works together in an open and respectful manner to achieve both goals. Nice. Okay, can we please have a summary of action items?
Okay. I've got, item 1, Mayor Rogan would like, Parks and Recs recommendation for potential uses for any, I'm sorry, that's a trustee reports. Item 1, ratifying a purchasing policy at the next Board of Trustee meeting. Item 2, ideas from staff on how to help businesses and residents with sharp increases in property taxes and the budget surplus. Item 3 was to research lease options for potential electric vehicles and pre-owned vehicles. Item 4 is the attorney or staff is to send out the social media policy to the board again for review. Item 5, ordinance 1158 was approved on second reading. Item 6 is circle back with the SFC for wayfinding recommendations and bring forth a pricing package at the next meeting. Item 7 is to slow down the IGA process and discuss a timeline. Item 8 is to hear of a resolution establishing the IGA task force for the April 16th meeting with the attorney recommendations.
April 1st.
April 1st, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Item 9 is draft the IGA task force application for the next board meeting. Item 10 is meet with Boulder County staff to determine their timing and deadlines for when we would hold meetings with the task force.
And their public process the county might be considering. Thank you.
Sure. Item 11 is direction to staff on cost analysis on vehicle replacement options, EV options, and not to exceed amounts. And these all may be jumbled because I was jumping around. Item 12 is approve the camera budget request, but then next I have budget amendments as follows: 125,000 to the general fund, 75,000 to sidewalks, 100,000 to streets, and the board approved the purchase of a truck, a plow, security cameras, and one vehicle. That's all right. There will be an executive session on town administrator Simonson's review at the next meeting. Town is to notify the Stone Canyon residents of the GOAT project. That's all I have.
I didn't have anything to add for follow-up items, but I remembered one that I needed to share with you. Just so everyone's aware, in case you get questions, the hedges between the high school football field and the dog park are going to be removed this week. That is a school project, not the town project. It's a safety issue, and I believe they're going to replace it with a fence so that you can see people in that area. But if you see that activity happening, you'll know what that's about. The other is there's going to be a prescribed burn that might be visible from like Antelope. So pretty close to town. So if you see smoke, that's later this month, right, Kim?
I think that's.
Burning there. Oh, backwards? Okay.
But we'll communicate
But
about the
yeah,
burn.
so if you see smoke, that's a prescribed burn up above Antelope.
And well, can we send out an e-blast about that?
We did today.
You did, okay.
That was.
Kim's already on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that was in the e-blast. The controlled burn is Wednesday, Thursday this week. Let me just look at the middle of senior school.
Yeah, I was told today that because of snow last week, they moved it to this week. But, so you see that happening, and our trail might be closed right there for a little while if they are.
Okay.
But just so if you get questions. That's a safety and security issue for the high school.
Okay. Attorney Detman, anything else?
No, my big two items were the social media policy and then the resolution for the committee, so.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you, everybody. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, great.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night. Oh, look at Paula still, you hand up.
Thanks, Paula. Thank you for hanging in there.